in the eastern city of Crimson Sun City, Wei Empire, Lu Prefecture. Jiang Jewel, who has been in this world for over 5 years, has already become accustomed to the presence of Yaoguai, demons, and immortals. As a traveler who crossed over to this world, Jiang Jewel was originally quite surprised by the situation. He awakened the Divine Destiny System. The Divine Destiny System can allow Jiang Jewel to deduce a person's past and future. It just has limitations. Calculation requires the consumption of points. The higher the cultivation level or talent of the person being calculated, the more points will be consumed. Points can be obtained by sacrificing to the system. As long as there are treasures with spiritual chi, such as spiritual treasures, Dan pills, heavenly and earthly treasures, they can be exchanged for points with the system. However, Jiang Jewel can only be used by the system to calculate divine destiny for others, and cannot be used to calculate divine destiny for oneself. Jiang Jewel also found that there seems to be a problem with this system, which is that the divine destiny system will force oneself and the person being calculated to tell the truth. If one conceals the truth, they will be rewarded with 3 calamities: heavenly retribution, either being saved by a deity or facing a life-threatening situation. Jiang Jewel knows that they cannot bear it. Instead, if they disclose the heavenly secrets, he actually receives a reward of earning merit and can obtain additional special rewards from the life of the person being deduced. The Divine Destiny System requires Jiang Jewel to deduce the divine destiny of at least 3 people every day. And he cannot actively seek out others for fortune-telling. He can only wait for others to come to him. He must accept the request for divine destiny deduction up to 3 times a day. Originally, Jiang Jewel was still worried about the number of fortune-telling sessions for today. But now Jiang Jewel is looking at the person in front of him. He only wants to slip away quickly in his heart, because the person standing in front of him at this moment, it turned out to be Tushanlan, the Supreme Lord of the 10,000 Yaoguai's Kingdom Heavenly Demons. Jiang Jewel swallowed hard with a bitter taste in her heart. He turned around and tried to slip away. Just as he turned around, he saw 2 maids of Tushanlan. The 2 of them stood behind him without him knowing when. Jiang Jewel could only turn around to look at Tushanlan. He squeezed out an unsightly smile and said, "As a person, always leave some room for others, so you can meet again on good terms." Tushanlan just said lightly, "But I am a demon." Upon hearing these insightful words, Jiang Jewel was momentarily at a loss for how to respond. When Jiang Jewel wanted to continue struggling, Tushanlan said slowly, "Tell my fortune or die." Jiang Jewel immediately took out paper and pen, offering them respectfully with both hands. He said, "Please give me your writing." Tushanlan raised his right hand. She used her slender fingers, as delicate as a spring onion. She sketched a vibrant kill on the paper. Jiang Jewel wisely pretended not to see it and began deducing divine destiny directly. But when Jiang Jewel saw the prompt on the divine destiny system, he was dumbfounded. Because it read, "Are you deducing the divine destiny for Tushanlan? This divination session will require 1 billion divine destiny points." It's the first time Jiang Jewel has seen a divine destiny divination for a person. It actually requires so many points to use. He has been in this world for over 5 years, but the points he has accumulated are not even close to a fraction of what is needed. Although Jiang Jewel can understand why it requires so many points, at this moment, he is still stunned in place. Upon seeing Jiang Jewel taking his own words, Tushanlan stood there dumbfounded. This deduction cost 1 million divine destiny points. Upon seeing this prompt, Jiang Jewel offered Tushanlan his divination gold, a lower-grade Taoist artifact, or 5 million spiritual stones. Tushanlan looked at Jiang Jewel with some surprise, but didn't say much. She took a small gourd from her waist, pointed a finger, and placed it in front of Jiang Jewel. After Jiang Jewel inspected it, he began divining the divine destiny. 1,001 years later, Xianxia is nursing her baby in Red Mist Valley. Just the first piece of divine destiny information caused Jiang Jewel to be instantly stunned. Nursing a baby? The Lord of Heavenly Demons, the nightmare of the human race in the supreme 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom, is actually happily nursing a baby 1,000 years later? Who has such ability? Before Jiang Jewel could recover from the first piece of divine destiny information, the second piece of divine destiny information appeared in his mind. In the year 1001, Xianxia is worried about her eldest son's education issues. This little troublemaker refuses to learn her martial arts and instead wants to study his useless father's divination methods. This makes her very angry. In the year 1002, Xianxia started teaching her second daughter and felt extremely pleased with their talents in cultivation. 1,003 years later, when Xianxia's fourth son participated in the ceremony of growth celebrating, he grabbed the 2 flags that his father had written. Only speak the profound truth, not a single word of empty nonsense. She was very angry as she had prepared various divine weapons and spiritual treasures such as axes, coins, hooks, forks, swords, and halberds. 1,004 years later, Xianxia, pregnant with her 5th child, showed no signs of giving birth this year, which made her suddenly begin to worry. 1,005 years later. The following several divine destiny messages are parenting insights from Xianxia. Only the last divine destiny message has changed. 1,010 years later. Jiang Jewel, the husband of Xianxia, returned to Red Mist Valley from Yellow Springs Bureau. She was very happy about this, but when they were intimate, her keen sense of smell detected the scent of another woman on Jiang Jewel's body. When Jiang Jewel saw these divine destiny messages, his expression changed from stunned to puzzled, and then to horrified. In the end, all his eloquence collapsed into a single syllable. Damn! Jiang Jewel still wants to see his future self. Will he be killed by this demoness? If not, can he pay some price to change his fate? But when he saw the merit required, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat and immediately dismiss the idea, because the system indicated that Xianxia currently has a negative 11,250,000 merit. If he were to alter her fate, he would also need to consume 1 million Jiang Jewels. Inwardly, he couldn't help but wonder what outrageous things this demoness had done to accumulate over negative 10 million merit. Why hasn't she been struck down by heavenly retribution? The merit he has accumulated over the years is not even close to enough to alter her fate. Xianxia softly asked, "Young man, have you figured something out?" Upon hearing Xianxia's pleasant voice, Jiang Jewel knew that if he told the truth, Xianxia would order his subordinates to kill him in the next moment. And at that moment, the system's prompt seemed to be as urgent as a life-saving talisman, urging him to make a choice. You glimpse divine destiny. You can choose to conceal the heavenly secret. Reward, merit minus 1 million. The 9-fold heavenly tribulation befalls and leads to death. Or you can choose to reveal the heavenly secret. Punishment, merit plus 1 million and select one of the following punishments. 1. Parenting experience of Xianxia. 2. Miscellaneous book. 10,000 ways to train a husband. 3. Half piece of jade pendant. He saw this prompt. Jiang Jewel couldn't help but hesitate. In the past, when he deduced divine destiny for others, even if choosing to hide the heavenly secrets, the punishment received was 3 calamities, heavenly retribution. But the system didn't explicitly say that death was the only option. However, this time, the system clearly told him that if he hid the heavenly secrets, he wouldn't make it through and would surely die. Jiang Jewel then looked at those 3 rewards and wondered what they were. After much hesitation, Jiang Jewel had no choice but to choose the third option and take a gamble. System prompt. The mortal-grade jade pendant without any fluctuation of spiritual power only has a damaged half-piece left, tainted with Xianxia's breath, seemingly concealing a secret related to Xianxia. The holder of this half-piece of jade pendant can unconditionally make Xianxia do one thing. After Jiang Jewel finished reading it, his face lit up, whispering to himself that there was hope. At this point, Tushanlan saw that Jiang Jewel had been silent for a long time and asked again slightly impatiently. "Young man, why are you silent? Could it be that you are trying to deceive me?" Jiang Jewel calmed down their inner turmoil. He smiled and gestured with clasped hands, saying, "Congratulations, Demon Lord. Congratulations, Demon Lord Tushanlan." Tushanlan frowned and asked, "What's the occasion for this congratulations?" Jiang Jewel continued, "Demon Lord, 1,000 years later, a harmonious marriage will bear 2 sons and 2 daughters, with 1 more on the way." Upon hearing this, Tushanlan exuded overwhelming demonic qi, his eyes revealing a murderous intent. Jiang Jewel, however, seemed oblivious and continued calmly. "The eldest son is remarkably intelligent, studying the arts of the 8 trigrams and the Book of Changes, mastering yin-yang and the 5 elements. He holds the fate of ancient and modern affairs in his hands. The second and third daughters possess astonishing talents, understanding the divine technique of battle and possessing the potential to dominate the world. The fourth son is young and has yet to cultivate, but exhibits the appearance of an innate immaculate sacred body, born with dual pupils, protected by the 5 immortal guardians and the 5 ghosts clearing the way. All immortals inherit the sacred fragrance of devotion. The 5th child is still in the womb, yet contains innate purple energy. The royal long vein often glances back, as if guarding its legacy. He is a heaven-ordained appearance befitting the human emperor." Jiang Jewel speaks with each sentence. The more Tushanlan speaks, the heavier the lingering evil aura becomes. She looked at Jiang Jewel as if looking at a dead person, slowly asking, "Do you know the cost of speaking nonsense?" Jiang Jewel smiled slightly, raised a finger to the sky, and said, "If I speak nonsense, may the heavens condemn me." Just as the words fell, a loud thunder roared in the sky, and a huge bolt of lightning slashed through the sky. Tushanlan looked at Jiang Jewel expressionlessly and said, "Since that's the case, young man, why don't you tell me what kind of man you are that can capture my heart?" Jiang Jewel flicked his sleeve, causing it to fall. Pointing to himself with his right hand, he said, "I am just a humble person, it is I." Tushanlan's pupils shrank slightly, and the sword slave behind her, upon hearing Jiang Jewel's words, drew her sword and stepped forward, intending to behead Jiang Jewel right then and there. Tushanlan slowly raised her right hand. She coldly said, "Young man, I'm afraid your calculation is off." Jiang Jewel did not doubt Tushanlan's determination to kill him. He quickly took out the jade pendant from his bosom and said, "Whether the calculation is accurate or not, I ask the Lord of Heavenly Demons to first look at this item before making a judgment." When Tushanlan saw the half-piece of jade pendant presented by Jiang Jewel, the overwhelming murderous intent on his body momentarily paused. He asked in confusion, "This jade, why is it on you?" Jiang Jewel held the jade pendant and said, "I have heard that the one who possesses the jade can make the Lord of Heavenly Demons agree to one thing unconditionally. Is this true?" Tushanlan's face darkened slightly as he remained silent. Jiang Jewel continued, "Can it be that the Lord of Heavenly Demons will agree to marry me?" Tushanlan responded lightly, "Yes." Her response. It surprised Jiang Jewel that even marriage is acceptable. Before Jiang Jewel could react, Tushanlan instantly appeared in front of Jiang Jewel, lightly lifted Jiang Jewel's chin, carefully examined it, nodded and said, "On closer inspection, the young man is quite handsome, but this divination may not be accurate." Then Tushanlan made a move, and the half-piece of jade pendant in Jiang Jewel's hand fell into her hand. Jiang Jewel felt teased and asked, "Why do you say that?" Tushanlan whispered in Jiang Jewel's ear, "Because I will take you back to the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom to get married. However, I only promise to marry you. On the wedding night, you shall go to your death. Your life will only last until the end of this year. Why talk about matters beyond 1,000 years? Do you think this divination is accurate?" Countless storm of curses are galloping wildly through Jiang Jewel's mind. He immediately said, "I just asked a question holding the jade pendant, and did not intend to make this wish. I asked the Demon Lord to return the jade pendant to me, so I can rethink. Tushanlan looked at Jiang Jewel with a sardonic smile and said, what do you think? Then Tushanlan instructed the sword slave behind him to take him back to the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom. Jiang Jewel watched as the two sword slaves approached him. He gritted his teeth and said, You demoness, whoever marries you is doomed. If I achieve merit in the future, I will change this calamity in my fate. As he spoke, he took out a talisman paper from his pocket and pinched it between his fingers. Jiang Jewel shouted, Goodbye, and then disappeared in an instant in front of everyone. After seeing Jiang Jewel disappear, Tushanlan showed a look of astonishment and muttered to himself, That talisman of his, is that the trick of Old Long? This fortune teller can even have the Old Long of Sun Moon Lake draw a life-protecting talisman for him. Who exactly is he? The sword slave kneeling beside him asked, Does the Demon Lord need me to capture the person and bring him back? Tushanlan nodded slightly and said, Let him live, bring him back to the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom. She then walked towards Sun Moon Lake, Wei Empire's southern heavenly mountain range. There is a big river named Jade Splendor River, a stream branching off from Jade Splendor River in the canyon. A quiet stream surface heard a plop sound. Jiang Jewel climbed up from the creek in a sorry state, muttering with helplessness, What bad luck! Afterwards, he thought about the yellow talisman he had just used up, and tears streamed down his face, feeling extremely bitter. The life-protecting talisman was tricked from Old Long after more than half a month of staying at Sun Moon Lake. He had not expected to use it today. Upon thinking about the Tushanlan Jiang Jewel, he said in a dark and hoarse voice, Tushanlan, you wait. After I have cultivated for 1,000 or 10,000 years and become invincible, I will never let you go. Then he thought about 1,000 years later. Tushanlan will marry herself and give birth to 5 children. This revenge method is not bad. But when he thought of the demoness killing people without blinking an eye, Jiang Jewel couldn't help but shudder. He thought to himself, Forget it, this is really unaffordable. It's better to work hard to accumulate merit and change this destiny. Later, Jiang Jewel got up and looked around, feeling puzzled about where he was. He walked towards the depths of the forest. Half a month later, in the mountains and forests of the southern heavenly mountain range, a large and muscular tiger is sprinting through the mountains and forests. Jiang Jewel is riding on the broad back of this tiger spirit. He holds a parchment scroll in his hand and murmurs, Finally about to leave the southern heavenly mountain range. He went through this half-month. He had long known where he was, but he didn't expect that Old Long's boundless miles divine movement talisman would teleport him to this deserted area near the Wei Empire. But the Wei Empire is very close to the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom, so Jiang Jewel is afraid to go back. He can only detour to the Qin Empire now. In the past half-month, Jiang Jewel has been deducing the divine destiny of the spirit beasts in the mountains and forests during this past half-month. It's fortunate that he has established spiritual intelligence here, and there are quite a few spirit beasts with profound cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to complete his daily goals of 3 tasks. And he also obtained such a large basket of treasures. Jiang Jewel was able to thrive in the southern heavenly mountain range because he predicted that a legitimate god would emerge here in the future. Wait until that time. The spirit beasts in front of us are all the followers of that true god, ultimately enjoying a share of the incense. It's just a pity that Jiang Jewel did not figure out who the true god from the southern heavenly mountain range is. Jiang Jewel plans to come back and take another look in the future. A moment later, Tiger's spirit carried Jiang Jewel to the front of Jade Splendor River. The river was vast, with a swift and turbulent current. Jiang Jewel looked at Tiger's spirit and said, The river water is treacherous. Even with a boat, it might be difficult to cross. Tiger brother, do you really have a way to help me cross the river? Tiger's spirit let out a low growl as if responding to Jiang Jewel. Then it took a step and came to the riverside. It let out a deafening roar, only to see the river churning up waves. Under the great river, a huge dark figure emerged from the water. Jiang Jewel looked at the monstrous creature in the river, instinctively took a few steps back. He exclaimed, "Oh my gosh!" After a moment, the enormous creature surfaced. The surging river water hit the embankment, creating splashes of waves. It was a giant turtle-like creature that was as big as a huge boat. The giant turtle spoke in a human language from its mouth, asking, "Who dares disturb my peaceful cultivation?" Evidently, this giant turtle had refined its throat bone and was a powerful demon with deep cultivation. The giant turtle turned its head downward towards the shore and quickly set its eyes on the Jiang Jewel beside the tiger spirit. The giant turtle slowly spoke. "I have heard that in recent days, a divination master has arrived in the mountains for this southern heavenly mountain range. Many wild spirit beasts have gained enlightenment, but who is this master? May I ask for the name of this master?" Jiang Jewel quickly returned the gesture and said, "My last name is Jiang." The giant turtle, quite knowledgeable about human etiquette, politely asked, "May I ask what brings the master to me?" The tiger spirit next to Jiang Jewel let out a low growl. The giant turtle nodded slightly and said, "So it turns out the master needs to cross the river. This is a small matter. If the master doesn't mind, I would be willing to carry you across." Jiang Jewel replied, "How could I trouble you?" The giant turtle chuckled softly and said, "Please don't worry. This is the southern heavenly mountain range. It's rare to encounter a master like you. I would like to form a good connection with you and get to know you." Upon hearing the giant turtle's sincere words, Jiang Jewel no longer declined and said, "In that case, I will not be polite." The Jade Splendor River flows swiftly, with steep cliffs on both sides. Occasionally, you can see birds gliding in formation through the sky. Jiang Jewel sits cross-legged on the back of a giant tortoise. He looks at both sides of the river, with the river breeze caressing his hair, feeling content. At this moment, the giant tortoise inquires, "Sir, may I know where you are heading?" Jiang Jewel responds, "To the Qin Empire." Upon hearing Jiang Jewel's destination, the giant tortoise's tone becomes a bit strange as he asks, "Sir, are you heading to the Qin Empire for something urgent?" Jiang Jewel replies, "Nothing urgent. I am just traveling around, going wherever my journey takes me." The giant tortoise continues, "In that case, let me offer you a word of advice, sir. It might be best not to go to the Qin Empire in these days." Jiang Jewel was slightly startled and asked. The old man asked, "Why do you say such things?" The giant tortoise replied, "Since you understand the ways of divination, why not look towards the great Qin to sense its energy?" Jiang Jewel suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. He relies entirely on the deduction of the system for divination. How could he understand physiognomy, qi observation, 6 run and 6 jiao, and so on? But Jiang Jewel, who is quick-witted, immediately said, "It's better for me to observe less about this dynasty's fate." The giant tortoise does not doubt that there are others, because the art of divination is a way of self-damage. Peeking into the secrets of heaven has many taboos. So it spoke up, saying, "What the gentleman said is right. I have spoken too much." Afterwards, the giant tortoise explained to Jiang Jewel, "In the past few years, the Qin Empire has been doing fine. Although the monarch of the Qin Empire is not a brilliant and wise ruler, he is a moderate king who maintains stability. Moreover, establishing relations with the Long King of Rivers and Seas has brought smooth sailing in recent years, and the people's lives have been relatively good." Just 7 years ago, the monarch of the Qin Empire was bewitched by an enchantress. In order to bring the enchantress into the palace, he deposed the originally virtuous empress. Over the years, he has been indulging in pleasures, neglecting state affairs, levying heavy taxes, and excessively constructing buildings. It is heard that within the imperial palace, a place called the Wine Pool and Meat Forest has been built, resembling a paradise on earth. The giant tortoise sighed a few times before continuing. "In conclusion, the Qin Empire is currently in turmoil and not very peaceful. If it is not urgent, it is better for you not to go there. Jiang Jewel is not a stubborn person and replied, "Thank you for the advice, I will remember it." However, Jiang Jewel still needs to cross this Jade Splendor River. After all, going back means bordering the Wei Empire and 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom, and Jiang Jewel dares not return now. After a few words of advice, the giant tortoise stopped mentioning the matter and began chatting casually with Jiang Jewel, asking some trivial questions. However, Jiang Jewel always felt that the giant tortoise seemed to want to ask something but was hesitant to speak up. Half an hour later, the giant tortoise carried Jiang Jewel to the center of the river. Suddenly, Jiang Jewel noticed movement beneath the water surface. Shadows emerged one by one from the water surface. Those turned out to be some large-sized fish, shrimp, and crabs. Obviously, these are definitely not ordinary river creatures, but rather some experienced Yaoguai. The giant turtle smiled and explained, "Sir, please don't be offended. These are all my apprentices. We have heard of Sir's exploits in the southern heavenly mountain range, summoning the wild spirit beasts. We just wanted to seek an opportunity. If Sir is not interested, I will send them away." Jiang Jewel realized that he had not completed his 3 tasks for the day. He said, "It's okay, meaning is fate. It's just that fate doesn't always work out as we wish." The giant turtle chuckled, its 4 legs lightly swaying in the water. Dispelling the water Yaoguai's doubts, the Jiang Jewel spoke up, saying, "Since you have said so, sir, I am shameless to ask you to divine a hexagram for me." The Jiang Jewel thought for quite a while, circling around in its mind. The giant turtle finally brought up the question it wanted to ask, and the Jiang Jewel smiled slightly, not surprised in its heart. The giant turtle saw Jiang Jewel's expression. It knew that its little scheme had been seen through and reluctantly said, "Sir, please don't be offended. I am aware that my actions were inappropriate. It's just that a question has troubled me for most of my life. It's rare to encounter such a remarkable person as yourself. If I miss this opportunity, I may regret it for the rest of my life. But please rest assured, I have roamed the Jade Splendor River for over 1,200 years and have some treasures to offer. Consider them as your divination fees, sir." Jiang Jewel asked, "May I inquire about the question that has been troubling you, sir?" The giant tortoise sighed, saying, "Since I gained wisdom. For 1,200 years of cultivation, a lifetime of doing good and accumulating virtues, without any wrongdoing, there are many ancestral halls on both banks of the Jade Splendor River that were built by villagers under my care. It can be considered a form of reverent worship. After 1,000 years of accomplishment, if the cultivation level does not progress further and the vitality begins to decline, yet the long transformation tribulation has not arrived, all the old man seeks is the matter of long transformation. May I ask, sir, can I undergo long transformation?" Jiang Jewel was stunned after listening to the words of the giant tortoise. He realized something was amiss. According to logic, if this giant tortoise was approaching the realm of long transformation, its body should display some features of transformation. However, apart from its massive size, the tortoise showed no signs of long transformation at all. It was clear that it had not even touched the edge of long transformation. Jiang Jewel was faintly filled with a sense of unease. Years of experience told Jiang Jewel that this divination of divine destiny might not end well. Dealing with a common little Yaoguai would be fine, but this giant tortoise, with 1,000 years of cultivation, was far beyond what Jiang Jewel could handle. Moreover, Jiang Jewel was currently on the tortoise's back. Jiang Jewel's face turned bitter, feeling inclined to refuse, but the system offered no room for rejection. Then Jiang Jewel addressed the tortoise, saying, "Sir, I must clarify beforehand that I charge a hefty fee in divination coins." Jiang Jewel attempted to scare the tortoise off with a large sum of divination coins, but to Jiang Jewel's surprise, the tortoise responded joyfully, "Sir, please feel free to speak." Jiang Jewel was suddenly speechless. He couldn't help but think to himself, "It's really strange. Are all the people who come to me for fortune-telling this wealthy?" He deduced that divine destiny requires a medium. Jiang Jewel usually asks the other party to write a word, but this giant turtle has not yet transformed, so it cannot write. In the end, Jiang Jewel started deducing with the turtle shell that fell off. Is it deducing the divine destiny of Jade Splendor River Blackback General? This deduction requires consuming 30,000 points of divine destiny. Jiang Jewel offered 300,000 spiritual stones to the giant turtle in exchange for 60,000 divine destiny points. However, Jiang Jewel encountered a hexagram he did not want to calculate, where the spiritual stones would always be doubled. The giant turtle was a bit stunned upon hearing this number. This hexagram gold truly is expensive. Although it has been cultivating in the Jade Splendor River for these years and has accumulated some treasures, it really cannot come up with so many spiritual stones. The giant turtle then made up its mind. It opened its mouth and spat out a green jade lotus seed. The giant turtle slowly said, "This green jade lotus seed. It is the fruit of a 1,000-year-old sacred medicine plant. Can it be used to cast the gold I Ching for Mr. Jiang Jewel? Let me check the system." Mysterious object. Green jade lotus seed. Can be exchanged for 80,000 divine destiny points. He nodded and said, "That's enough." At this point, Jiang Jewel had no excuse to refuse, so he began deducing the divine destiny. At the age of 0, a bird tortoise was born in the southern heavenly mountain range, Jade Splendor River. At the age of 60, the turtle mistakenly ingested a green jade lotus seed. Accidentally activated spiritual intelligence, self-titled as Blackback General. At 200 years old, Blackback General is stirring up trouble at Jade Splendor River. Devouring the essence and blood of living humans, cultivation progresses rapidly by leaps and bounds. At 500 years old, the Blackback General received guidance from a master. He seeks to cultivate the power of incense, purge the Yaoguai Qi, and start seizing ordinary people in the Qin and Wei empires, capturing and breeding the human race, and constructing heretical shrines. At 800 years old, the Celestial Clarity River's little dragon king passed by the Jade Splendor River. He discovered the misdeeds of Blackback General, so he angrily took action. Blackback General managed to escape, but was injured at the foundational level, making it difficult for his cultivation level to progress further. At the age of 1201, Blackback General desperately sought the opportunity for long transformation, but to no avail. Presumptuously, he seeks investiture from the human sovereign, and colludes with the Qin Empire's enchantress consort to abduct refugees and refine elixirs from human blood. 1,204 years old. Blackback General heard that a human expert had arrived at the southern heavenly mountain range seeking guidance, but was told that death was imminent. Furious, Blackback General intended to throw the expert into the Jade Splendor River to suppress for 1,000 years. However, the expert broke the curse of heavenly retribution and perished. Jiang Jewel was taken aback. No wonder this giant turtle, with a cultivation level of 1,200 years, has not undergone the long transformation yet. It's because it dares not. It has always concealed its fate with the incense from the Yin Temple to avoid heavenly calamities and escape its karmic debts. How could it survive the long transformation tribulation? The system continues to prompt at this time. You peaked a divine destiny. You can choose to conceal the heavenly secret. Reward, merit minus 30,000, 9 sins heavenly retribution. You peaked a divine destiny. You can choose to divulge divine destiny. Reward, merit plus 30,000 and choose one of the following punishments. 1. Blackback General gains insight into the divine path of faith and incense. 2. Dan Alchemy gains insight into the method of blood elixir ritual refining. 3. Divine Technique, the art of water manipulation. Jiang Jewel is looking at these 3 rewards. After a brief consideration, he chose the third option. At this moment, the urgent voice of Blackback General sounded in Jiang Jewel's ear. "Sir, may I have the opportunity to use the long transformation?" Jiang Jewel took a deep breath and said calmly, "Perhaps you have underestimated my abilities. You, a killer, come to me for divination? Blackback General, you really have quite the nerve. The giant turtle trembled in shock that Jiang Jewel knew his real name. Over the years, Blackback General had been keeping a low profile to avoid the little Long King from the Celestial Clarity River. Why would this person know his true name? Could it be that his divination skills had reached an unparalleled level, where he could discern such information? Did he figure it out through divination? Later, Blackback General tried to stay calm and said in a deep voice, "Sir, I only ask about my own long transformation opportunity. As for other matters, I have never asked you to divine. Have you taken the divination fee, sir?" Upon hearing this, Jiang Jewel burst into laughter, and after a moment he spoke. "Opportunity for long transformation? Since you seek the opportunity for long transformation, then I shall provide you with this opportunity long transformation tribulation. Will you dare to undergo it or not?" The Blackback General felt a sense of unease in his heart and asked, "What do you mean by these words, sir?" Jiang Jewel replied lightly, "I am willing to sacrifice my own merit. I will write a letter, the petition to heaven, for you. I present a memorial to the heavens, granting you an opportunity for a dragon transformation." Jiang Jewel's words not only did not make Blackback General happy, but instead revealed a look of horror. He angrily shouted, "I kindly gave you a ride across the river, yet you repay kindness with enmity? Are you humans and cultivators truly such treacherous individuals?" Jiang Jewel turned a deaf ear and held his hands in a gesture of courtesy. He bowed towards the sky and paid his respects. "Disciple Jiang Jewel, respectfully requesting Celestial Venerable of Profound Thunder Arts to listen to the story of the Blackback General, who has cultivated diligently for over 1,200 years in the Jade Splendor River, accumulating merits through acts of goodness and rigorous practice." The Celestial Venerable mentioned in Jiang Jewel's petition is the legendary deity who wields the thunder tribulation penalties in the heavens. As Jiang Jewel spoke each word, the originally clear sky began to gradually change, dark clouds looming in the sky. The rumbling sound is incessant. Blackback General feels an intense sense of crisis in his heart, his eyes becoming fearful. He can't believe this person would actually use the art of summoning gods, and even summon the Celestial Venerable of Profound Thunder Arts. Blackback General angrily said, "Impudent child! The old man has a kind heart towards you. How dare you act like this?" Blackback General kept roaring, turned his head, opened his mouth wide, and tried to swallow the Jiang Jewel in one gulp. The Jiang Jewel stood proudly on the back of the turtle. He showed no fear at all, shouting loudly, "Celestial Venerable above, merit within me. How dare you, a petty person, try to harm me?" The Blackback General was so enraged that its teeth were almost crushed, but it dared not continue to devour the Jiang Jewel, because this long transformation tribulation was brought by the Jiang Jewel. If the Blackback General devoured the Jiang Jewel at this moment, then the Blackback General would undoubtedly die. At this moment, the petition to heaven by Jiang Jewel is nearing its end. For the virtuous, heaven's reward awaits. For the wicked, heavenly retribution awaits. Please consider carefully. After Jiang Jewel pointed at the sky and shouted, dark clouds immediately thundered, and streaks of purple lightning snaked across the sky. The long transformation tribulation has arrived. Later, Jiang Jewel looked towards Blackback General and laughed heartily. "Blackback General, weren't you seeking advice from me? I've always been accurate in divination, speaking nothing but the truth. Today, here in this place, you will meet your end under the Celestial Tao's long transformation tribulation. Retribution will be fulfilled without fail." With a loud laugh, Jiang Jewel leaped into the river. Jiang Jewel, who has mastered the art of water manipulation, can move freely underwater. However, due to not yet reaching the realm of golden body without leaks in their cultivation level, they need to come up for air every once in a while. But he is still able to cope with the current situation. Jiang Jewel quietly surfaced from the water. He looked from afar at Blackback General crossing the long transformation tribulation, with a faint incense chi lingering around Blackback General. The scene of countless people worshipping could be vaguely seen within this incense chi. Faint voices seemed to come from afar. With boundless merit, grand immortal of jade splendor Blackback, rescuing those in need. The transcendent Darkback Bodhisattva of the golden body. When the thunder descended and struck Blackback General. The thunder, however, was completely neutralized and dissolved by this incense chi. General Blackback felt extremely heartbroken. These incenses were accumulated over hundreds of years. Never did it imagine that so much would be consumed today. However, if it can successfully pass through the long transformation tribulation, then everything will be worth it. Blackback thought of the Jiang Jewel and sternly declared in his heart, "For this opportunity, I, as an old man, will take it on." General Blackback solemnly looked at the thunderclouds in the sky. It is ready to face this wave of heavenly tribulation. But just at this moment, it suddenly realized that Jiang Jewel was standing on the river not far away looking in this direction. Blackback General felt a sense of unease rising in his heart. Sure enough, I saw Jiang Jewel smile slightly at it, then raised his right hand, index finger and middle finger together, with a faint gold light at the fingertips, pointing at it from afar, saying, "The Lu Temple incense, the path of Yaoguai and evil, we will not tolerate it. Disperse. Disperse." This golden light is condensed by Jiang Jewel's own merit, specializing in breaking evil. When the golden light falls upon the Lu Temple incense surrounding Blackback General, it is like a flame falling into the snow. Instantly the ice and snow melt. Blackback General watches helplessly as the incense accumulated over thousands of years is shattered by a single move. Under the attack of urgent fire, it spits out a mouthful of blood and roars sharply, "The Jiang boy, I have an eternal feud with you." Jiang Jewel pointed to the sky and sneered, "Without the protection of your temples and incense, let's see how you overcome this calamity." The Blackback General, without the protection of the temples and incense, felt the faint blood fiend chi surrounding him instantly sensed by the heavenly calamity. The calamitous cloud swelled multiple times in an instant. Despair flashed in the Blackback General's eyes, as he knew he couldn't pass through this heavenly retribution. The Blackback General no longer wasted effort trying to resist the heavenly thunder. It spat out a mouthful of blood and shouted in a stern voice, "The Jiang boy, even if I die, I will not let you off easy." The blood contained all the Yaoguai power of Blackback General, transformed into a blood sword shooting towards Jiang Jewel. When Jiang Jewel saw the blood sword approaching, his expression stiffened and then turned pale in an instant. Jiang Jewel cursed, "Damn!" He then used the divine technique of water manipulation to escape into the Jade Splendor River. The Blackback General laughed heartily as he watched Jiang Jewel flee in a sorry state. "The blood sword is locked onto your aura. Let's see where you can escape to, Jiang surname. You'll bear the consequences, even if I die." At this moment, a crimson thunderbolt slowly descended upon the head of the Blackback General. The blood sword followed Jiang Jewel into the depths of the river. This moment caused the Jade Splendor River to create towering waves. A few days later, at the border of the Qin Empire, a painted pleasure boat was floating on the Jade Splendor River. On the deck of the boat stood a distinguished young master in a blue robe with white clothes, distinguished brows, and phoenix-like eyes. With his outstanding appearance, the distinguished young master looked worried as he gazed at the Jade Splendor River. In his heart, he recalled the flood that occurred in the river a few days ago. The area affected by the flood was near the capital of the Qin Empire, Xianxia, where a large amount of fertile land was submerged. He feared that in a few days, there would be an influx of refugees due to the flooding. What is even more worrisome is how much grain is left in the national treasury. If the grain reserves are not enough to support the current situation, there may be famine. At that time, within the Qin Empire, it will surely be a living hell. He also thought about since the enchantress entered the palace. When the Qin Empire fell, the place indeed became chaotic with evil spirits. Just as the esteemed young master was thinking about these matters, someone at the stern of the ship shouted, "Young master, we have fished a person onto our boat. He seems to still be alive, and he looks a bit strange. He was clearly fished out of the river, but his body is completely dry. Even his clothes are still dry. This person is none other than Jiang Jewel. Jiang Jewel slowly regained consciousness from the coma, feeling a splitting headache that made him extremely uncomfortable. He furrowed his brows, holding his head with force, not knowing where he was at the moment. He took a while to adjust before he could clearly see the objects in the room. Jiang Jewel felt the room was swaying continuously, and he could vaguely hear the sound of flowing water. He wondered if he was on a boat. Who pulled him out of the Jade Splendor River? The next moment, his face froze as he took out a broken jade pendant from his embrace. This was a life-saving spiritual treasure that had lost its effectiveness now. Jiang Jewel looked at the broken jade pendant with eyes filled with sadness. He then sighed, and could only console himself in his heart. Peace in every little piece. Peace in every little piece. Then he thought of that Jade Splendor River old turtle, which could also be considered a 1,000-year-old Yaoguai at the cultivation level. The sacrificing blow before death only shattered one of its life-saving items, and he is still in one piece. Thinking this way, Jiang Jewel felt no loss. However, Jiang Jewel now has a certain uncomfortable feeling, a sense of suppressed crisis lingering in his mind. Subsequently, Jiang Jewel sits cross-legged and meditates, introspecting himself, but he does not find any injuries on his body. Jiang Jewel slowly opens his eyes. His brows furrowed, there seems to be a foreboding sense of imminent disaster. Suddenly Jiang Jewel's face changed abruptly and he said, "Speaking of which, what day is it today?" At the same time, the system's prompt tone sounded in Jiang Jewel's mind. Detected that the host has not deduced the divine destiny little 3 calamities for 3 days. The heavenly tribulation is about to descend. He is just a small cultivator at the 8th layer of foundation establishment. Even though he has some means, how can he survive the thunder tribulation? Jiang Jewel forced himself to calm down. He knew that this day would come sooner or later, so he had long researched many methods to avoid the heavenly tribulation. As a great merit holder, blessings would come from the heavens. Even if he faced the tribulation, it would be greatly weakened. Next is to cultivate the path of incense and offerings. Just like the old tortoise from Jade Splendor River, who relies on incense chi to avoid heavenly tribulations, but it indulges in improper incense offerings which belong to Yaoguai and the evil path, it has many drawbacks. However, if it is an orthodox cultivation of the path of incense and offerings, it requires sealing the position of the deity. Once the deity is established, it adds an extra layer of constraints. It is not such a simple matter. Over the years, Jiang Jewel has accumulated a considerable amount of merit by deducing divine destinies for others. However, with his own cultivation level being too low, it would be difficult to overcome the heavenly tribulations even if he puts in more effort. When Jiang Jewel opens the system panel to check his remaining merit, he can't help but let out a soft exclamation. The system indicates that Jiang Jewel currently has a remaining merit of 100,054. Jiang Jewel remembers that his own merit was over 90,000 before. Later, at the request of the Jade Splendor River Old Turtle, he activated the Celestial Venerable of Profound Thunder Arts. Jiang Jewel thought he could burn incense when he had half of his merit left, but now, why has it increased? Afterwards, Jiang Jewel looked through the system logs and only then found out why the merit increased. The host punishes evil and promotes goodness. Eradicate evil. Yaoguai Jade Splendor River Blackback General Merit plus 50,000 merit has reached 100,000. Blessings from Heaven. Divine Technique Self-Performance. Congratulations to the host for opening the divine eye to comprehend divine technique. Art of Chi Observation. Jiang Jewel's face looked a bit strange. The art of Chi Observation allows him, the fortune teller, to become more competent. Jiang Jewel sighed. If he could use the art of Chi Observation to find the hiding place of the dragon, he could avoid the disaster. However, the disaster was already looming over him. Unless the hiding place of the dragon was right in front of him, it would be useless. Jiang Jewel had to come up with another plan. The boatman kindly saved him. He didn't want to burden others with his own tribulations. He planned to thank them and then leave. Jiang Jewel had just walked out of the door when he collided with someone. Jiang Jewel scanned the opposite party dressed in luxurious clothes, and with an imposing demeanor. It was clear that this was a person of great wealth and status. When Jiang Jewel saw the person's appearance clearly, his gaze shifted downward. He was taken aback and couldn't help but say, "Why does this guy look so effeminate, but flat-chested? I thought I ran into a woman disguised as a man. Misunderstanding, misunderstanding." Jiang Jewel came back to his senses, bowed with a smile, and said, "Thank you, young master, for saving me. I still have matters to attend to, so I bid farewell here." Facing imminent danger, Jiang Jewel couldn't care much about etiquette anymore, and he finished speaking. He didn't wait for the other party to speak. Jiang Jewel turned and walked away. The esteemed young master watched Jiang Jewel's departing figure with some suspicion. The man beside him, Daoist Shan Yang, exclaimed angrily, "Young master, this person is very rude. You kindly rescued him, yet he acts so impolitely." The esteemed young master, lost in thought, suddenly spoke up. "Go after and see what's happening." Jiang Jewel left the cabin, looked up at the sky, and saw dark clouds obscuring the sun, with lightning snakes wandering. The three calamities are not just a sudden death like lightning, it corresponds to the three trials: simplicity, illness, and the edge, representing hunger, illness, and warfare. The three calamities may not take lives instantly, but they are like maggots on bones, making people unable to live and unable to die. The precious young master behind the Jiang Jewel. He looked up at the sky in shock. At the next moment, Jiang Jewel leaped up and with a splash, disappeared over the ship's side. The goatee-toting Taoist suddenly pointed at the surface of the Jade Splendor River and exclaimed in surprise, "Young master, look!" The esteemed young master followed his gaze and saw Jiang Jewel standing on the water, walking away briskly as if on land. The esteemed young master exclaimed with emotion, "Truly a person of divine and extraordinary abilities." While he was still pondering, suddenly a ray of sunlight shone on his body. The previously overcast sky, at this moment, surprisingly cleared up as the clouds dispersed, and the sky cleared once again. After Jiang Jewel left the painting boat, he immediately activated his celestial eye and used his chi observation divine technique. His eyes were shining with divine light. He looked at the fish swimming in the river and the grass and trees on the bank. They all give off a faint clear aura, which is fate and destiny. If he can find the hidden long feng shui treasure, the Jiang Jewel, he can cover the mystery and avoid the three small calamities of fate. But when he takes in a view of the surroundings, he had a bitter look on his face. In this world, how could there be such a coincidence? The hiding place of Long is not so easy to find. It's just a pity that this place is too far from Sun Moon Lake. I'm afraid that old friend won't be able to help me either. Shortly after, Jiang Jewel chuckled and said to himself, "Although I can't find the location of the hidden dragon, at least I can find a place with better feng shui to serve as my burial place." Just as Jiang Jewel looked behind him, he couldn't help but exclaim softly in surprise. Within his pupils, a burst of brilliance was emitting. Such a strong dynasty, fate, and destiny. On the painted pleasure boat, the Taoist with a goatee respectfully seeks advice from the esteemed young master. Young master, who recruits talented individuals widely, on the painted pleasure boat. The Taoist with a goatee respectfully seeks advice from the esteemed young master. Young master, who recruits talented individuals widely, considers this person as potential assistants, thinking it might be beneficial for young master. After hesitating for a moment, he shakes his head and sighs, saying, "Forget it. Such high-caliber individuals, if forced to do something against their will, would be counterproductive." Just as the two were discussing, a hand was placed on the ship's railing. Then Jiang Jewel leaped onto the ship. Goat-bearded Taoist bellowed, "Young master, be careful." Then he shielded the young master behind him, and watched the newcomer warily. This person is none other than Jiang Jewel. He looked at the two uncertain people and smiled, bowing and saluting. Sir, we meet again. After half a month, Jiang Jewel is on the ship arresting people everywhere. This brave individual, your physiognomy is extraordinary. Why don't I calculate a divination for you? Jiang Jewel can catch a person for you. But the other party seems to show signs of rejection, waving hands repeatedly. He hurriedly left as if avoiding a disaster. Not long after, there was only him left on the deck. Jiang Jewel sneered in disgust and muttered under his breath, "Bah! A bunch of ignorant fools." It was just then that a laughter came from behind him. If Sir Jiang could hear a few kind words from your mouth, they wouldn't be avoiding you like this. Jiang Jewel turned around and saw the Taoist with a goatee by the side of the esteemed young master. He bowed and said, "Taoist Master Chui, Taoist Master Chui." Jestfully he added, "Sir Jiang, it's only been a few days, and the people by the young master's side have almost been offended completely by you." Jiang Jewel scratched his head a little embarrassedly. He said, "The hexagram is like this, so I am just saying it as it is." Taoist Master Chui smiled and said, "The most difficult thing to accept in this world is candid advice. If your predictions are not favorable, you might as well put it in a more tactful way." Jiang Jewel shook his head and said, "Speak only profound and subtle truths, never utter a word of common falsehood." Taoist Master advised Jiang Jewel not to imitate other swindlers in the martial arts world, but since there is a system in place, he must be honest about his actions, or else he will be punished. Taoist Master Chui, seeing his stubbornness, stopped advising him and nodded, saying, "The young master has returned and wishes to see you. Please go to him as soon as possible." Jiang Jewel replied, "The young master has returned? Then I will go now." At this point, it is close to the small three calamities heavenly tribulation that Jiang Jewel must undergo. It has been half a month since then. At this moment, he can still stand intact here thanks to the young master, who can use his dynasty fate and destiny to achieve the effect of concealing the heavenly secrets. Therefore, it seems that Jiang Jewel will have to stay by the young master's side until he is capable of overcoming the small three calamities heavenly tribulation. Jiang Jewel entered the cabin and soon saw the young master, who asked, "Is the disaster relief over, young master?" The esteemed young master replied, "Yes, please take a seat, sir." These days, Jiang Jewel has already figured out the other party's details and can bestow dynasty fate and destiny upon them. He is naturally not an ordinary person. This person is named Young Master Saki. He is the younger brother of the ruler of the Qin Empire, ranking below only the imperial prince. Young Master Saki has the title of virtuous prince in the Qin Empire and enjoys a reputation for being friendly with talented individuals and having countless followers. Originally, he was leading a leisurely life in his own fiefdom as an idle imperial prince. However, in recent years, due to the neglect of state affairs by the ruler of the Qin Empire, he was summoned by the court as the regent to oversee the country and temporarily resides in Daliang. Recently, he has come to the vicinity of Jade Splendor River to address the flooding issue, providing disaster relief and distributing food supplies. Young Master Saki looked at Jiang Jewel with a smile and asked, "I heard that you are skilled in divination, calculating 3 hexagrams each day. Could you calculate a hexagram for me today?" Jiang Jewel's eyes sparkled as he quietly activated the art of Qi observation. He saw that the destinies of ordinary people were mostly formless clouds of mist, and one could infer their fortune from observing their colors. Absolutely, young Master Saki is unexpectedly a golden eagle. However, this golden eagle is footless. Fate and destiny are clearly feminine traits, and young Master Saki truly embodies feminine characteristics. However, can a woman be referred to as a king? Indeed, there have been many private matters in palaces throughout the dynasties. Young Master Saki looked at Jiang Jewel with a puzzled expression, feeling that Jiang Jewel's gaze at him at this moment carried a hint of pity. Young Master Saki clears his throat a few times. Jiang Jewel only just regained his senses and replied with a bow. "I would like to continue staying by young Master's side to earn a living, but I am not insistent. However, if young master insists, I can also read a fortune for young master. Young Master Saki also realized that the people below have been complaining to him these days, saying that Sir Jiang never speaks a good word when he reads fortunes. At this moment, young Master Saki has lost interest in finding Jiang Jewel for a fortune-telling. He nodded and said, "Since you are unwilling, let's drop the matter." Jiang Jewel immediately bowed and replied, "Young master, you are magnanimous." Putting aside the digression, young Master Saki began to talk about business matters. "Actually, I summoned you here to inform you of something. I am planning to make a trip to Xianying, and I wanted to ask if you would like to accompany me to Xianying, or if we should part ways here." Jiang Jewel still needs the help of young Master Saki's dynasty fate and destiny to avoid heavenly tribulations. He expressed, "I heard that young master is looking for followers. If you don't mind, I would like to stay by your side and have a meal with young Master Saki." Young Master Saki smiled and replied, "Of course, I don't mind. This is the only good news in these days." Jiang Jewel then asked, "I wanted to ask earlier, when I entered, I noticed that there was a trace of pent-up energy between young master's eyebrows. Is there something bothering you?" Young Master Saki sighed. "It's just disaster relief. The silver and grain allocated by the court are far from what I expected. I know that the grain brought in must have been eaten by people and horses along the way, but what about the silver coins? However, with a grant of 100,000 silver coins, only 30 to 40% reaches my hands. Where did the rest of the silver coins go? This time when I return to Xianying, I will question the court." Jiang Jewel knew about the issues with the Qin Empire beforehand, but now it seems even more serious than imagined. Jiang Jewel thinks that this flood on the Jade Splendor River is related to himself. Obviously, the cause of this flood on the Jade Splendor River is the long transformation tribulation of Blackback General. If Jiang Jewel does nothing, he might be held accountable for the devastation caused by the disaster. In that case, his merits will be damaged, and his hopes of accumulating enough merits to transcend the tribulation will be dashed. Jiang Jewel contemplated for a moment. He said, "Young master, do you know the cause of this flood?" Young Master Saki was taken aback and hurriedly asked, "Do you know, sir?" Later, Jiang Jewel narrated in detail, explaining clearly the background and identity of Blackback General. He particularly emphasized on the vicious deeds the general had done. Young Master Saki could have patiently listened at first, but when he heard the infuriating parts, he clenched his fist and slammed the table, cursing loudly. "This old demon is truly despicable. No wonder there have been innocent disappearances along the Qin Empire all these years. It turns out to be the doings of demons and evil beings. These demons and evil beings even dared to plan the long transformation, seeking to usurp the imperial throne." Jiang Jewel looked at the infuriated young Master Saki in front of him, puzzled as to why he avoided talking about that enchantress consort. Young Master Saki calmed down his emotions. He looked at Jiang Jewel, puzzled. "Sir, how do you know these things?" Jiang Jewel replied nonchalantly, "The old turtle once ferried me across the river, and I happened to find out." Young Master Saki naturally does not believe this evil matter. How could it be possible for him to discuss it with others, especially since he first saw Jiang Jewel being rescued from the Jade Splendor River? Moreover, when thinking about Blackback General suddenly crossing the long transformation tribulation, Jiang Jewel confidently asserted that Blackback General was bound to die without a doubt. It seems that this old turtle died under the calamity, surely related to Jiang Jewel. Indeed, he is a great figure. Jiang Jewel, unaware of young Master Saki's thoughts, smiled and said, "Young master, your concerns are nothing but money and provisions. I will use this as a declaration of intent to assist young master and lend a helping hand." Young master was surprised and quickly said, "How can I let you incur expenses, sir?" Jiang Jewel waved his hand and smiled, saying, "I have no means. If young master relies on me for financial support, then I am willing but unable." Young Master Saki asked in confusion, "What do you mean, sir?" Jiang Jewel replied. The old turtle diverted a significant number of people from the Wei and Qin empires to maintain the incense offerings at the temple in the southern heavenly mountain range. Isolated from the world, besides providing incense offerings, they also serve as labor to cultivate spiritual plants and celestial herbs. They have food supplies, accumulated over many years, enough to address the urgent needs of young master. The old turtle has already perished under heavenly retribution. The underwater cave mansion is now ownerless. This old turtle is also an ancient Yaoguai that has lived for 1,000 years. Within the Yaoguai cave mansion, there are many treasures accumulated over 1,000 years, which can be exchanged for silver coins. Purchasing grain from the wealthy families along the river is enough to aid young master in disaster relief. After young master Saki listened, he exclaimed with great joy, "This method is excellent. Sir, you are truly benevolent and righteous. Your achievements will last for eternity. I thank you on behalf of the people of the Qin Empire. In this way, the people will be saved. Time is of the essence. Let's depart immediately." While Jiang Jewel led young master Saki to raid the Blackback General's hideout, Tu Shanlan and Sword Slave arrived above Sun Moon Lake. Tu Shanlan whispered, "I've come here to see the Old Long King." The surface of Sun Moon Lake boiled, and only a dragon's roar was heard. A golden dragon emerged from the water. Just as he was about to soar into the clouds, the golden dragon transformed into an elegant old man with white hair. The old man looked at Tu Shanlan with a smile and said, "So it's the Lord of Heavenly Demons who has arrived. Old Long El Mythic has met the Lord of Heavenly Demons before. I wonder why the Lord of Heavenly Demons has come to Old Long at Sun Moon Lake." Tu Shanlan's servant slave stepped forward. She unfolded a scroll in her hand, and Tu Shanlan asked, "Has Old Long King ever seen this person?" El Mythic stepped forward to examine the portrait closely, with a look of astonishment on his face. The portrait unmistakably depicted Jiang Jewel. After pondering for a moment, he replied, "This person is called Jiang Jewel, who once came to my heavenly book pavilion to borrow books for half a year. We had a pleasant conversation and formed a close friendship. I wonder if this young friend of mine has offended the Lord of Heavenly Demons." Tu Shanlan glanced at him and replied casually, "So what if he offended?" El Mythic smiled and said, "Lord of Heavenly Demons, could you please give Old Long a bit of face?" Tu Shanlan replied, "What if I don't give it to him?" El Mythic's kindly smile gradually faded. After a long silence, he slowly spoke, "If Lord of Heavenly Demons insists, then it must be Old Long's fate. However, if Lord of Heavenly Demons wants to deal with him, it may not be easy." Tu Shanlan's eyes flashed with cold light as he said, "Are you threatening me?" El Mythic, however, was not afraid. He turned his back to Tu Shanlan and said, "It's not that I want to protect the little one, but my little friend is extraordinary. If Lord of Heavenly Demons were to act against him, I'm afraid it would entail many karmic consequences. He is the embodiment of destiny's momentum. With his rise, the world has no choice but to change." Tu Shanlan frowned, thinking about this Old Long who had immersed himself in the I Ching and 8 trigrams divination over the years. His way of speaking had become more puzzling, but she quickly relaxed her brows, nodded, and said, "So be it. Only an extraordinary person is worthy of being my husband." El Mythic's expression became stiff. At this moment, El Mythic even doubted if he was getting old or if there was a problem with his ears. "Husband? Lord of Heavenly Demons wants to marry him. And it's Jiang Jewel?" Tu Shanlan continued. "Since you are familiar with this human race, little fortune teller, do you know about his background?" El Mythic seemed to be very secretive about this and kept shaking his head, saying, "Can't say, can't say." Tu Shanlan glanced at him and only said one word, "Oh." El Mythic just sighed and said, "Old Long's divination skills are not precise enough to trace the origin of Jiang Jewel. He could only calculate events up to 5 years ago within this realm. There was no mention of Jiang Jewel in this world before. This person can transcend the 3 realms, and is not bound by the 5 elements. This is indeed a remarkable individual." Tushan Lan's servant slave murmured softly. Could it be that Jiang Jewel is an immortal descended from heaven? Tushan Lan did not take this seriously and murmured softly. Where would immortals come from in this world? But deep down, he thought to himself. I didn't pay much attention to this human race fortune teller, but I didn't expect AO Mythic to hold him in such high regard. Qin Empire, Xianying outskirts. Inside a carriage. Jiang Jewel sneezed for no reason and muttered to himself, not knowing who it was, secretly scolding himself. However, Jiang Jewel stretched lazily and whispered, Forget it! With my mouth, there are plenty of people bad-mouthing me behind my back. Right at this moment, Jiang Jewel felt the carriage gradually coming to a stop. Just as he was about to ask what was happening, the coachman respectfully said, Sir Jiang, we have arrived at Xianying City. Jiang Jewel instantly felt invigorated, thinking, Finally, we have arrived. After Jiang Jewel looked around and frowned, he muttered to himself, Strange. In broad daylight, on the main road of a capital city, why are there no pedestrians or carriages? Normally, it should be a bustling place under the emperor's rule, with many carriages and horses. This doesn't make sense. Jiang Jewel's eyes shimmered. Celestial Eye activate. Jiang Jewel activated the Celestial Eye to take a look at the fate and destiny of the capital city of the Qin Empire. But when his gaze turned towards Xianying City, his expression gradually became solemn, and he absent-mindedly murmured, This is really. Jiang Jewel's eyes reflected overwhelming demonic qi. A crimson long in the sky above Xianying City is currently entangled in a fierce battle with the demonic qi. Jiang Jewel quickly realized that this crimson long is a manifestation of the empire's fate, the great Qin Long bloodline. However, at this moment, this empire's fate long is already heavily wounded and trapped by the demonic qi. Suddenly, Jiang Jewel noticed that the crimson long was looking towards him. He suddenly felt a bit thirsty and tongue-tied. Jiang Jewel quickly closed his celestial eye. Then he took a long breath. He wiped his forehead, and only then realized that his back was already soaked with cold sweat. There is now a serious problem. Facing the urgent decision of whether Jiang Jewel should enter Xianying City or not, the fate of the Qin Empire has obviously weakened to the extreme. It is feared that the country is on the verge of collapse. I heard that there is also an enchantress consort causing trouble in the palace. If I enter Xianying City and work as a servant by young Master Saki's side, I am afraid I will be involved in it. But if I sneak away, how do I deal with the calamities of the three calamities? For a while, I can't find another dynasty fate and destiny to borrow from. Forget it, I will still enter the city. Jiang Jewel thinks that people can be unlucky, but not always unlucky. If young Master Saki is unlucky, it's better to run away early. Young Master Saki is not sitting in the carriage at the moment. Instead, he is riding a tall and majestic horse, parading through the streets and enjoying the love and support of the people. Jiang Jewel, watching intently from the carriage, muttered, I said young master was going to enter the city. Why is he riding a horse instead of the carriage? Such arrogance. However, Jiang Jewel was clear in his heart. This young Master Saki is indeed a rare person who is good at getting things done. Jiang Jewel has seen with his own eyes these days this female prince. How does she personally take action? She is still a hard-working and kind-hearted person. After a while, the group arrived at the residence of Prince An. Jiang Jewel followed young Master Saki into the study. He couldn't help but look around. Over the years, Jiang Jewel had visited many extraordinary places that were difficult for ordinary people to see. However, this prince residence was the first time he had entered. Young Master Saki saw Jiang Jewel. He looked at the things in the room with joy on his face. She smiled and said, If the gentleman likes anything, feel free to take it. Jiang Jewel smiled and said, How could I compete for the love of young master? Young Master Saki graciously replied, Sir, there's no need to be so polite with me. Feel free to take what you like, it's no bother. Pause for a moment. Young Master Saki then began to discuss business. I will be entering the palace tomorrow to meet the emperor. This time, the success in resolving the water crisis is all thanks to you. When I enter the palace, I will definitely seek official positions and noble titles for you, Jiang Jewel. Jiang Jewel was shocked and quickly waved his hands, refusing. No, 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 please don't. I am used to being carefree and unpredictable. Who knows when I might wander off again? Serving as an official in the court is absolutely not suitable for me. In his heart, Jiang Jewel secretly thought, are you kidding me? The Qin Empire is on the verge of collapse. How could I be so foolish as to join the court at this critical moment? Moreover, the political struggles in the court are so dangerous. I should prioritize survival above all else. Young Master Saki heard Jiang Jewel's response. Although she was a bit disappointed, she still respected his opinion and said, since you put it this way, I won't insist, but... Young Master Saki changed the subject abruptly. Her tone turned cold as she said in a low voice, but tomorrow I will enter the palace, and I will ask all the civil and military officials in the court about this. If their hearts were to be cut open, how many of them are truly loyal and how many are treacherous? Jiang Jewel kindly reminded, young master, whether someone is good or bad, their hearts are all red. Young Master Saki instantly lost his momentum, and she gave him an annoyed look. Later, young Master Saki softened his tone a bit and said quietly, anyway, this time, without Mr. Xian, it's probably difficult for the Qin Empire to recover for 5 years. It's because of this matter that I truly see the corruption. This matter must be thoroughly investigated. Tomorrow, after entering the palace, I will discuss with the Grand Preceptor. Jiang Jewel listened quietly to young Master Saki's endless plans by the side and began to daydream. When he came back to his senses, he found that young Master Saki had finished speaking and was looking at him. Jiang Jewel quickly nodded and said, young master is right. Young Master Saki obviously noticed his distraction and sighed. It seems that Mr. really dislikes court affairs. My apologies, Jiang Jewel. Jiang Jewel could only smile awkwardly. After chatting for a few moments, young Master Saki asked Jiang Jewel to go and rest. At night, young Master Saki hosted a grand banquet at his residence. Jiang Jewel naturally also participated in it. After the meal, Jiang Jewel took advantage of the toasting. He returned to his residence, and after a moment, only the steady sound of Jiang Jewel's breathing could be heard in the room. By the time the third watch of the night arrived, a red glow fell on the center of Jiang Jewel's forehead. In the midst of slumber, a gentle voice rang in Jiang Jewel's ears. Young sir, young sir. Jiang Jewel slowly opened his eyes. He found himself in a chaotic environment, and Jiang Jewel felt puzzled. Suddenly, a flash of red light in front of him. In the midst of that chaos, slowly coalesced into a figure. It turned out to be a red dragon. Jiang Jewel exclaimed in shock. Qin Empire's fate? Red Long saw his disturbance and whispered, sir, do not be alarmed. I am the manifestation of Qin Empire's fate, not a being of demons and evil. Jiang Jewel tried to remain calm and asked, Red Long, what is the purpose of entering dreams? Red Long crouched down. It lowered its head and spoke in a pleading tone. Please, sir, save me! Jiang Jewel forced a bitter smile and repeatedly bowed. I am just a wandering freelance cultivator. How can I save a country's fate and destiny? Qi Long replied, Sir, you are too modest. That day on the Jade Splendor River, the gentleman acted on behalf of heaven to punish evil. You punished the Yaoguai turtle on Jade Splendor River, that was witnessed by me. Speaking of this, when the Red Long thought of something, he quickly said, Sir, please don't be offended. I did not mean to spy, but I can know everything within the territory of the Qin Empire myself. Jiang Jewel waved his hand, indicating that he didn't mind. Qiong felt slightly relieved and continued, Sir, you are a person of great merit. I can also see your extraordinary qualities. I have come here presumptuously, and hope that you can help me. Jiang Jewel only considered this as a compliment. But he did not know that in the eyes of the Red Long, Jiang Jewel was entangled with countless cause and effect relationships, and all those involved were rare great fate bearers. However, he himself had no karma and existed outside of the three realms and transcended the five elements, this immortal being. The Red Long lowered his eyes, showing more respect, and said, "If Sir does not take action, I'm afraid the Qin Empire will soon perish. Please consider the lives of the people of the Qin Empire." These grand statements overwhelmed Jiang Jewel, leaving him dizzy. He hastily stopped him and said with a bitter smile, "You ask for my help, but how can I help?" The Red Long slowly recounted, "The decline of the Qin Empire to this point is all because of the entry of the enchantress consort into the palace, leading to the confusion of the monarch's mind." After listening to the narration of the Red Long, Jiang Jewel only realized that although there were countless problems in the Qin Empire, what truly shook the fate of the empire was the enchantress consort. Jiang Jewel asked in confusion, "What is the background of the enchantress consort that could actually shake the foundation of a country?" The Red Long replied, "The enchantress consort comes from the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom and is a jade spirit." 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom? Jiang Jewel suddenly became vigilant in his heart. He is now particularly sensitive to the name 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom. After all, the mother of his future child may still be looking for him with a knife in hand. Jiang Jewel suppressed his thoughts and continued to inquire, "What cultivation level does the enchantress consort possess? Is it at a level that even the fate of your empire cannot contend with?" Crimson Long replied solemnly, "She came to the Qin Empire to transcend the calamities of heaven and earth." Jiang Jewel's heart skipped a beat, concerning matters of cultivation. It is going against the heavens, facing various tribulations to cultivate in the Yaoguai race. It is much harder than for humans. To reach this cultivation level, enduring the earthly fiends and celestial vanguard tribulations, the strength of the Yaoguai race is comparable to the great talents of the human race. It's not something that Jiang Jewel, at his small 8-layer foundation establishment, can handle. Qi Long also saw Jiang Jewel's unwillingness and whispered in a pleading tone, "I know you are in a difficult position. I'm not asking you to deal with the Yaoguai, but I have another request." Jiang Jewel sighed and said, "Please speak directly about your request. However, my abilities are limited, and I'm afraid I may not be able to help you." Qi Long was very determined and said, "Only you can help me in this matter. The emperor has been corrupt for a long time. I know you are proficient in I Ching and 8 trigrams divination. Please help choose a new wise ruler for the Qin Empire." Qi Long opened his mouth and spit out 2 items. He then said, "These 2 items are to be handed over to Mr. Jiang Jewel." I wanted to decline, but the 2 items had already drifted before him. One of these items is the long-head jade seal, and the other is a long-tailed guillotine blade. The Long said, "This jade seal gathers the essence of the long lineage of a nation. The one who holds this seal shall be the future ruler of the Qin Empire. Please take care of it, and when you encounter a righteous ruler, hand it over to them." Then, it looked at the other item and continued, "This is the execution guillotine, used to cut off the karma of past lives. It can behead tyrants and evil spirits. If the ruler of the Qin Empire is unjust, it will be your divine duty to execute them. As the current ruler of the Qin Empire lacks virtue and righteousness, this item will surely assist you in your endeavors." Jiang Jewel looked at the item in his hand. He secretly thought that he had entrusted the fate of the Qin Empire to himself. Without waiting for him to speak, Red Long said, "The 2 items are handed over to you, not forcing you to agree. If you are unwilling to help, it is the fate of the Qin Empire. If you are willing to help, I am willing to give you half of the Empire's fate in return. From now on, the Qin Empire is yours, and you are the pillar of the Qin Empire. To show sincerity, you have recently encountered the small 3 calamities. I will help you to fend them off." As soon as the words fell, Red Long opened his mouth and swallowed the Jiang Jewel. Inside the small courtyard house, Jiang Jewel suddenly let out a loud shout and sat up from the bed. The lingering shock in Jiang Jewel's pupils had not yet dispersed, and he was gasping for breath. Just when Jiang Jewel thought it was just a dream, the next moment. However, he caught a glimpse of two items placed on the bed, which were none other than the long-head jade seal and execution guillotine Jiang Jewel. Unable to help but stare in astonishment, it seemed that his experience just now was not just a dream. The appearance of the red long in the dream was real. Jiang Jewel looked at the two items in front of him. He was feeling troubled in his heart. He was only an 8-layer cultivator, and not even a native of the Qin Empire. Why would the fate of the Qin Empire entrust these two items to him? Was it because he punished the old turtle of the Jade Splendor River? Or was it because he was skilled in divination? What did the red long see on him that made it make such a decision? He just wanted to use young Master Saki to avoid the three calamities. Why did it let him encounter such things? Jiang Jewel long sighed. What did the red long mean by, "Half of the empire's fate is bestowed upon the gentleman, and from now on, the Qin Empire belongs to the gentleman"? These are all his mother's nonsense. If the ruler of the Qin Empire were to know that he possessed these two items, wouldn't he drag himself to the market to behead himself? Also, the one at the foundation is the enchantress consort of the earthly fiend stage. Jiang Jewel groaned, holding his forehead, experiencing a splitting headache. However, at this moment Jiang Jewel indeed no longer felt the sensation of being locked by the heavenly tribulation. It seems that this red long was not deceiving himself. Jiang Jewel suddenly realized. Since he no longer needs to face the three calamities, isn't it the best choice for him to leave now rather than risk staying in the Qin Empire? Then he can find a secluded place, meditate for 1,000 years, and only reappear when he has the strength to dominate Tushanlan. Wouldn't that be a satisfying plan? But Jiang Jewel's gaze always lingers on those two items on the table. After a long while he sighed and said, "Alas, it feels terrible to be soft-hearted." "Well, do your best," he said in his heart. "Once I feel danger, then it's no wonder it's my fault." He then hid the things on the table. However, Jiang Jewel also knew that in order to fulfill the Qin Empire's fate entrusted to him, he needed to meet with other royal relatives. But dropping by unannounced didn't guarantee that anyone would see him. Just go with the flow. After Jiang Jewel arrived at the Qin Empire half a month later, in the palace's back garden, a large man in a black and gold robe was lying on a bench in the back garden. This man is the ruler of the Qin Empire, Emperor Wu of Qin. At this moment, anger is evident on his face. At this moment, a woman who appears to be in her 20s, with a graceful figure approaches. This person is Yu Xian from the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom, also known as Jade Spirit. She walks over to Emperor Wu of Qin. She lies on his chest and asks with a coquettish smile, "Who has annoyed the king so much?" Emperor Wu of Qin still said with a somewhat unfriendly tone, "Who else could it be? It must be my younger brother, Qin Saki, who dared to confront me in the court along with the Grand Tutor, not allowing me to establish Leopard House. Is it the Qin Empire that rules, or is it I who rules?" Emperor Wu of Qin clenched his right fist. He smashed the low table beside him with all his strength, splitting the solid rosewood into two halves. He angrily exclaimed, "What else does this humble one need to do? They are pushing it too far by disrespecting me like this." Yu Xian listened quietly. When Emperor Wu of Qin was panting heavily, she gently stroked his chest and whispered, "Your Majesty, don't worry. This leopard house is just a joke of mine. It doesn't have to be built if you don't want to. Why make it difficult for yourself?" Emperor Wu of Qin held Yu Xian tightly, sighed. "If everyone were as understanding and reasonable as you, my beloved consort, then I would die without regrets." At this moment, a beautiful servant walked over and bowed, saying, "Your Majesty, Queen Emperor Wu of Qin, someone outside the palace wishes to see Queen Emperor Wu of Qin and has brought a gift." Yu Xian looked puzzled and said softly, "Bring it here." The beautiful servant walked over, holding a tray with a palm-sized token on it. Yu Xian saw this token, her pupils constricting, and she stood dazed for a moment. Emperor Wu of Qin noticed her unusual behavior and asked, "Beloved consort, what's wrong?" Yu Xian finally snapped out of it. She regained her composure and smiled, saying, "Your Majesty, it's my family from my maiden home. I'll be right back." Emperor Wu of Qin responded, "Please invite them in quickly." In a secluded side hall in the rear courtyard of the palace, Lady Yusuxian lightly lifted her long skirt and knelt down respectfully, saying, "I, a humble lady surnamed Su, pay my respects to Lord Sword Mystic." The silver fox-faced mask turned around, with a cold voice saying, "Now that Lord Sword Mystic is no longer in this world, only the Lord of Heavenly Demons has the devoted attendant devoted sword slave." Yusuxian lowered her eyes and answered softly, "Although the master was defeated by Lord of Heavenly Demons, Lord of Heavenly Demons is an extraordinary figure. It is an honor for the master even in defeat, his illustrious reputation remains. This humble one has long admired the master, and today upon meeting, my heart is filled with trepidation. I just do not know why the master is looking for this humble one." In Yusuxian's heart, there is indeed some anxiety. The two clans of Human and Yaoguai have long been divided by the Golden Sand River, signing treaties to not invade each other's territories. Now, Yusuxian's unauthorized entry into the Qin Empire has violated the agreement. She fears that Lord of Heavenly Demons may order her to return. If that is true, she is unwilling in her heart. Currently, she is experiencing the tribulation of the earthly fiends, and only by drawing on the vein of the long can she expedite the tribulation. Otherwise, she will undoubtedly perish. Devoted Sword Slave noticed her fidgeting and said coldly, "No need to overthink. You can't deceive our master. Today we are looking for you to help locate a person." Yusuxian visibly breathed a sigh of relief, immediately smiling and saying, "Please give your orders, my lord. If you need to find a person within the Qin Empire, I will turn the Qin Empire upside down to find them for you." Devoted Sword Slave reached into his bosom and took out a portrait. The scroll unfolded, revealing a portrait of Jiang Jewel. Devoted Sword Slave spoke slowly. "This person is named Jiang Jewel. His cultivation level is unknown, but he escaped with his life from under the Lord of Heavenly Demons." Yusuxian raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised in his heart. Escaped with his life from under the Lord of Heavenly Demons? To be able to escape from that person's hands, I'm afraid there are no more than 5 individuals from the Human and Yaoguai races. Why have I never heard of such a person before? Devoted Sword Slave said, he borrowed the talisman from the Sun Moon Lake Long King, so his own strength may not be that high. Yusuxian breathed a sigh of relief. So that's how it is. However, Yusuxian still fears Sun Moon Lake Long King. That Long King is the oldest figure in the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom, the saga of the Yaoguai race. To obtain the talisman from the Jiang Jewel for protection, it must have a close relationship with that old Long. How weak can his own strength be? Devoted Sword Slave continued, although this person's cultivation level is unknown, he possesses some divine techniques. The appearance in this portrait may not be accurate. Perhaps changing one's appearance is common in the world. Yusuxian asked, "Sir, do you have this person's spiritual sense imprint?" Devoted Sword Slave shook his head and said, "I don't have it. However, this person understands the ways beyond, is skilled in divination, and when divining for others, he once had a pair of maxims, only speak the profound truth, not a single word of empty nonsense." Yusuxian smiled bitterly and said, "Sir, is this all you have?" Devoted Sword Slave replied softly, "Only this." Yusuxian's heart was helpless as she said, "How can we find people with only this?" Yusuxian planned to agree outwardly, while having different thoughts in her heart. After she sends Devoted Sword Slave away, she will treat this matter as if she had not heard it. However, the next words from Devoted Sword Slave immediately changed her mind. Devoted Sword Slave said lightly, "If you find this person, my master promises to grant you a spot in the abyss of myriad demons." Yusuxian was astonished and quickly asked, "Sir, is this true?" Devoted Sword Slave replied nonchalantly, "My master's words are not to be taken lightly." Yusuxian was momentarily speechless, her heart filled with excitement. If she could enter the abyss of myriad demons once, she wouldn't have to worry about the twin calamities of the world anymore. she would definitely reach the Yaoguai King stage. She must find the Jiang Jewel no matter what. Yusu Xian's smile brightened as she respectfully said to devoted sword slave, "Please rest assured, sir. This humble one will do her utmost to find this person." Devoted sword slave took out a jade talisman and handed it to Yusu Xian. She instructed, "If you find Jiang Jewel, crush this item, and I will be informed." Afterwards, devoted sword slave left to search for the whereabouts of Jiang Jewel in other countries. Half an hour later, in the backyard of the Imperial Palace, Serenity Palace, Yusu Xian nestled in the arms of Emperor Wu of Qin and tenderly said, "Your Majesty, may I ask for one thing?" Emperor Wu of Qin laughed heartily and replied, "My dear consort, feel free to make your request. There is nothing I won't grant you." Yusu Xian spoke softly. "During these nights when I sleep, I always dream of an immortal teaching me miraculous dances and wondrous arts. I want to refine these celestial dawn for the great king, but I am not proficient in Taoist medicine and Dan alchemy. Can the great king invite some extraordinary experts to help refine the Dan pills?" Emperor Wu of Qin asked in slight confusion, "Immortal entering dreams? How is an immortal involved?" Yusu Xian softly scolded in Emperor Wu of Qin's ear. The immortal said that this Dan pill can make the great king feel more vibrant. Emperor Wu of Qin revealed a loving smile. Laughing heartily, he said, Okay. All according to you, all according to you." Yusu Xian happily cheered for Emperor Wu of Qin. She took the opportunity to make another request. "In addition, I also want to invite some fortune tellers who are good at I Ching and 8 trigrams divination to interpret my dreams." Emperor Wu of Qin also readily agreed to this. This is a glance into Xianxia City. Jiang Jewel walked down the street with a carrying pole on his back, with a newly made long flag inserted in the pole. He planned to find a suitable place on the street to set up a fortune-telling booth and tell fortunes to people. Jiang Jewel is also helpless about this. He originally thought that with so many people in young Master Saki's residence, 3 of them could support him for a year or more a day. However, the reality is, he only stayed at the government office for less than half a month, yet everyone in the house already avoided him like a snake or a scorpion. They couldn't even hide in time. The reason behind this is that Jiang Jewel calculated that no one in the prince's residence can have a good ending. Yet he was not quick to escape. Receiving 3 beatings a day would be the least of his worries. Jiang Jewel strolled on the street. He couldn't help but feel very emotional. A true hero is someone who dares to face the bleak life. It seems that there are no heroes among the people around young Master Saki. Jiang Jewel once gave an observation to young Master Saki. "He has the appearance of a hawk without feet." So he has been avoiding deducing the divine destiny for young Master Saki. Taking into account his recent deductions of the divine destiny for the people in the prince's residence, among the 3,000 servants, there are even rural old farmers. In the eyes of others, it's just a joke. However, Jiang Jewel always feels that this is just young Master Saki trying to deceive people, because among these attendants there hides a group of truly talented foreigners. It is also for this reason that Jiang Jewel believes that young Master Saki's ambitions are not small. Jiang Jewel is just puzzled. Young Master Saki is not worthy of the golden eagle. The eagle is a bird, while the dragon is a serpent. How can the eagle transform into a dragon? Upon seeing the guests at the prince's residence, divine destiny Jiang Jewel couldn't help but sigh quietly. He realized he no longer faced the worry of the 3 calamities. Should he leave now? Unconsciously, Jiang Jewel arrived at a marketplace. He looked around and found no companions, so he put down his backpack. Before long, he set up his divination stall. However, when Jiang Jewel looked up at the pedestrians in front of him, he couldn't help but be stunned because the surrounding pedestrians all stopped and looked at Jiang Jewel with a strange look in their eyes. Jiang Jewel thought to himself, "Are people from the Qin Empire so rare that they have never seen a handsome man before?" Just as he was puzzled, an old man carrying a shoulder pole whispered kindly to remind the young Taoist master to pack up quickly, because setting up here is not allowed. Jiang Jewel quickly asked. Sir, what do you mean by that? Does it mean that the government does not allow divination stalls to be set up here? But the old man refused to say more to him, and just lowered his voice to instruct him to leave quickly, then walked away briskly. When Jiang Jewel was still puzzled, a pair of officials arrived at the stall of Jiang Jewel, strutting arrogantly, and asked, Are you here to tell fortunes, kid? Jiang Jewel hurriedly packed up the fortune-telling stall. Then he smiled and said, Official, I didn't know that fortune-telling stalls are not allowed here. I will leave now. Please make it convenient for me, sir. Jiang Jewel approached the leader of the official soldiers, searched for a purse from his sleeve, and stuffed it into the other party's hand. Jiang Jewel roamed the rivers and lakes, naturally understanding the current world. It is easy to meet the king of hell, but the little ghosts are hard to deal with, and money can resolve disasters. The leader of the official soldiers accepted the purse, weighed it in his hand, and a subordinate beside him took out a portrait. He compared it to Jiang Jewel in front of him and said, Sir, this person doesn't look like the one in the portrait. He shouldn't be the Taoist called Jiang Jewel that imperial consort is looking for. Jiang Jewel's ears perked up as he overheard the whispering conversation of the official in front of him. Cold sweat dripped down his back uncontrollably as he thought to himself, Jiang Jewel? Me? The one imperial consort is looking for? This imperial consort is probably that enchantress consort from the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom. If she's looking for me, it's definitely not for a good reason. It must be related to the Lord of Heavenly Demons. But even if she is looking for me, she doesn't need to portray herself. What she doesn't know is that it's so ugly and unbearable. The portrait obtained from Xianxia, the devoted sword slave, is still very similar. It's just that when she let the people below redraw a few, by the time they were distributed to these officials, they lost their authenticity. At this moment, the leader of the officials asked, Young Taoist, may I ask, what is your surname, your name, and where do you cultivate? Jiang Jewel immediately replied, I am Zhang Daoling, cultivating at the Long Tiger Mountain. Just a wandering Taoist alchemist. The leader of the officials grumbled. He had never heard of the place Long Tiger Mountain, but Jiang Jewel breathed a sigh of relief, thinking he had managed to bluff his way through. He then saw the official who had just taken his money wave his hand and say, Take him away. Jiang Jewel's face was full of disbelief as he said, Sir, this. The leader of the officials pointed backwards and said, This is the invitation from the emperor to invite talented individuals from all over the world to the palace to refine the celestial Dan. It's your fortune to be invited. You must not refuse the toast only to drink a forfeit. Jiang Jewel clearly saw it. The carriage behind him is a prison wagon, inside which are some unkempt Taoists. This doesn't look like an invitation. Jiang Jewel, wearing a long robe and holding a yellow talisman, appeared in his hand. He was about to cast a spell to leave this place. He lifted his head and locked eyes with one of the prisoners in the carriage. He immediately froze in place. Taking advantage of Jiang Jewel's momentary distraction, the officers had already tied him up. In the prison carriage, Jiang Jewel and Taoist Master Cui sat opposite each other, looking at each other. Jiang Jewel spoke up and asked, Taoist Master Cui, what a coincidence. Were you also arrested when leaving the mansion today? Why didn't you reveal your identity? Taoist Master Cui forced a smile and said, Revealing my identity would be useless. Many of the attendants at the prince residence were arrested when the palace sent people there, and I was even called out by name. Hearing this, Jiang Jewel was a bit stunned. During his time at the prince residence, Taoist Master Cui served as the chief steward, assisting young Master Saki with internal and external affairs. For someone of his status to be personally targeted by the palace, isn't that a slap in the face to young Master Saki? Taoist Master Cui anxiously said, This time, the Emperor's focus on Dan refining is probably aimed at our master, Sir Jiang. Remember not to reveal your relationship with young Master. Only by doing so can we ensure safety. Jiang Jewel's face slightly changed. He nodded slightly. At this time, the prison door opened. An official shouted, "Who is Taoist Master Chui from the residence of Princeton? The lady has requested Taoist Master Chui." Taoist Master Chui replied helplessly, "I am he." Then he got out of the carriage and left with the attendants. Jiang Jewel and the others were taken to an underground palace hidden beneath a rockery in the backyard. In another side palace of the Imperial Palace, young Master Saki is glaring angrily at the overly blue color in front of him. She repeatedly urged the eunuch several times, wanting to meet Emperor Wu of Qin because she had important matters to discuss. However, the eunuch in front of her just kept smiling without sincerity, avoiding the issue. Just as young Master Saki was at a loss for what to do, Yu Xian unexpectedly invited him to visit Graceful Heart Palace. Although young Master Saki had doubts in his heart, for the sake of the host's reputation, he had no choice but to follow the maidservant to the harem, Graceful Heart Palace. Young Master Saki just entered the hall. She then saw a graceful figure sitting in front of the musical instrument, delicately fingers gently plucking the strings, playing a melody. Young Master Saki was not the first time to see Yu Xian, but she did not know before that she was so proficient in music theory and had such excellent skills in playing the zither. At this moment, the zither music suddenly stopped, and Yu Xian laughed softly, saying, "I have just started learning this piece myself and am not very familiar with it. I apologize if I made any mistakes, Imperial Prince." Young Master Saki had no intention of discussing music theory with her. He immediately said, "I heard that Her Majesty received the transmission of immortal methods in her dreams, summoning all the Tao traditions to the palace to refine the celestial Dan for His Majesty." Yu Xian replied, "Has the Imperial Prince also heard about it?" Young Master Saki suddenly choked with anger and said, "Today, the Imperial Palace guards invaded the Prince's residence and took away my guests. How could I not have heard about this?" Yu Xian replied nonchalantly, "It seems like there was such a thing. Today, the Imperial Palace guards entered the Prince's residence and took away my followers. How could I not have been informed about this?" Yu Xian replied nonchalantly, "Speaking of which, it seems that there is such an incident. Most of the followers in the Prince's residence are talented individuals, especially with the reputation of Taoist Master Chui's Sky In Mountain White Jade True Taoist. Even I have heard of him. Cultivators at the 5-layer celestial cycle stage are rare to find in the Qin Empire. With their help, the refining of celestial Dan will surely be more successful." Young Master Saki was surprised in his heart. Even his own followers rarely know the identity of Taoist Master Chui. Unexpectedly, this enchantress is aware. Could it be that she has investigated his background? Yu Xian said again, "It is said that the Imperial Prince is proficient in music. Coincidentally, I also enjoy this art. How about the Imperial Prince teaches me how to play the guqin?" Young Master Saki said solemnly, "Are you humiliating me?" Yu Xian coquettishly said, "Imperial Prince, why do you speak like this? I am just sincerely seeking guidance. Who knows, if I am in a good mood, I might let you go." Young Master Saki remained silent for a long time and asked, "Are you really going to let him go?" Yu Xian replied, "If today Imperial Prince teaches the Qin, I will let White Jade True Taoist leave the palace with you." Young Master Saki heard these words. She then wanted to call a maid to bring another Yao Qin, but she realized at this moment that within the Graceful Heart Palace there was not a single maid, only herself and Yu Xian. Yu Xian said behind the curtain, "Imperial Prince, feel free to enter the tent. This Qin of mine is the phoenix tail from among 10 Qins. How could an ordinary Qin have such a sound?" Young Master Saki felt cautious at first, but then realized that both he and she were women, so there was nothing to fear. He then spoke up, "All right, then I will enter the tent." Yu Xian was stunned this time. She didn't expect young Master Saki to come in so easily. Was it because he was really innocent, or because he had already set his sights on her, and couldn't wait for this to happen? Young Master Saki sat in front of the zither, gently plucking the strings. Yu Xian placed the sheet music beside young Master Saki and leaned on him, sending flirtatious glances with her eyes. Just as young Master Saki was about to interrupt this overstepping action, suddenly, her mind felt heavy and foggy. The things in front of her became blurry. She reached out her hand towards the figure of Yusuxian, which appeared layered in her eyes. Then, she blacked out and fell down. Yusuxian embraced young Master Saki. He lifted her chin with his fingers, looked at her carefully, and said with a smile, "I know you, virtuous prince, are not interested in women. If I wasn't prepared, I wouldn't have let you come near this incense burner burning with aphrodisiac scent. I'm not afraid that you won't be tempted." Yusuxian then picked up young Master Saki and walked towards the bedroom, feeling puzzled. He wondered why young Master Saki's body was so light and nimble, like that of a woman. On the bed, Yusuxian gently opened young Master Saki's shirt. But the scene before Yusuxian made him angrily exclaim, "Damn it! How can she be a woman?" She originally wanted to seduce young Master Saki. Even if she couldn't seduce him, framing and trapping should still work. But what should be done now? Emperor Wu of Qin must also be aware that she is a woman. Yusuxian looked at young Master Saki, whose eyes were tightly closed on the bed with a flushed face, and gritted her teeth, saying, "Don't think I can't deal with you like this." Later, Yusuxian called a maid over. He asked her to find a disgustingly ugly beggar. The more unkempt and repulsive, the better. The maid then left to fulfill the order. Inside the underground palace, Jiang Jewel looked around. He thought to himself, if what Taoist Master Cui said is true, it seems that many guests of the prince's residence have been arrested. But I haven't seen any of them on my way here, so they must not be locked up here. Enchantress Consort's direct search for me means she is targeting me specifically. If those guests have average relationships with me and recognize me, they might sell me out. Jiang Jewel dared not take the risk and pondered. He turned to a Taoist next to him and said, "Excuse me, Taoist Master, I would like to exchange clothes with you. Is that fine?" The unkempt Taoist Master, upon hearing this unexpected offer, thought to himself, Jiang Jewel's silk outfit could fetch a good amount of money if pawned. So he hastily agreed to the exchange. A moment later, Jiang Jewel changed into the new clothes and politely said to the guards, "I need to use the facilities." The guard impatiently instructed Jiang Jewel to hurry up and return quickly. Jiang Jewel arrived at the outhouse and was nearly overwhelmed by the overwhelming stench inside. But at the moment, he didn't have time to think about it. Jiang Jewel took out a Dan pill from his chest. He put it into his mouth and swallowed it down his throat. Jiang Jewel's body underwent rapid changes. His jet-black hair turned white at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his once young and taut skin became loose. At the same time, a foul smell began emanating from him. Jiang Jewel doesn't mind in his heart. Living without fear, what does a little dirt and smell matter compared to staying alive? Jiang Jewel finally felt relieved and came out of the outhouse. He thought to himself that even young Master Saki wouldn't recognize him like this, let alone those servants, who have only seen him a few times. While he was secretly pleased with himself, a voice suddenly came from behind. "Stop right there, turn around." Jiang Jewel's body tensed up, and he turned around nervously. He grinned and asked, "Are you calling me miss?" The maidservant covered her nose in disdain and said, "Shut up and follow me." At first, Jiang Jewel thought that the other party had sensed her identity, but to her surprise, the maidservant actually led her out of the underground palace. She realized that the other party must not know her true identity, otherwise she would have been tied up a long time ago. After a while, Jiang Jewel was led to outside a palace, and the maidservant glanced at her and said, "Wait here." Without another word, she entered the palace. Jiang Jewel looked around and found that there was no one guarding the palace outside. She immediately realized that this was a good opportunity to escape. Just as she was feeling excited, suddenly, a spiritual sense swept out from inside the palace, falling on him. Jiang Jewel realized that his breath was being locked on by someone. The immense pressure made him feel a bit out of breath, with cold sweat instantly appearing on his face. A moment later, a soft laugh came from the hall. "You have found an interesting person. Bring him over." The voice was charming and alluring, stirring up an unnamed fire in the hearts of men just by listening to it. Jiang Jewel was greatly surprised. What a powerful clipped tone! This must be the enchantress consort. Fortunately, Yusu Xian did not recognize him. Just as Jiang Jewel was puzzled, the maid walked out from the hall and said to him, "Follow me." Under the guidance of the maid, Jiang Jewel quickly arrived at a side hall. The maid pointed her hand and said, "Go in." Jiang Jewel was about to say something. He was kicked in by the maid before he could say anything. Shortly after, Jiang Jewel heard the sound of the door being locked behind him, feeling puzzled about what was going on. At this moment, Jiang Jewel twitched his nose and couldn't help muttering, "What's that smell so fragrant?" After a moment, Jiang Jewel felt a rush of heat in his body and his mind became heavy. Then Jiang Jewel's face changed abruptly. He quickly covered his mouth and nose, hurried to the side of the curtain, kicked over the purple gold incense burner, and exclaimed in shock, "Could it be that the enchantress consort wants to pull me into bed?" Just as Jiang Jewel was lost in his wild thoughts, a few groans came from the bed behind the curtain. Jiang Jewel was taken aback by the sound, thinking to himself, "This voice sounds familiar." Afterwards, Jiang Jewel quietly approached and cautiously lifted a corner of the curtain. A woman wrapped in white cloth lay on the bed, with her straight black hair scattered around, revealing her snow-white shoulders. Jiang Jewel exclaimed in shock, "Young master?" Jiang Jewel couldn't care about etiquette, walked forward and carefully identified that the woman on the bed was indeed Xianxia. However, at this moment, Xianxia was in a very wrong state with her eyes tightly closed, in a state of unconsciousness. Her cheeks were flushed hotly, and from time to time, there were some intriguing gasping sounds coming from her mouth. Jiang Jewel remembered that on weekdays, Xianxia dressed in male clothing, so he had never realized that she was actually a beautiful woman. Jiang Jewel placed 2 fingers on Xianxia's neck and sensed that the poison she had been exposed to was very strong. Jiang Jewel saw that Xianxia was about to collapse. He gritted his teeth and said, "This enchantress consort is truly vicious. She set up a bewitching fragrance in this room, and even deliberately brought in a dirty and ugly beggar to defile her. Truly the most venomous woman's heart." Jiang Jewel looked at Xianxia and said with a bow, "Young master, everything I do next is all for the purpose of saving you. Please don't take offense even if I inadvertently offend anyone." After saying that, he got on the bed and helped Xianxia up, then continued, "I have a life-saving item on me that can break the current situation. However, before that, we need to unwrap the bandages on young master's body, take a drop of blood from his fingertip." Jiang Jewel reached out to unwrap the bandages on Xianxia's body as he spoke. Jiang Jewel struggled before finally unfastening the buckle. Just as Jiang Jewel was about to make the next move, Xianxia in one's arms, eyelashes trembling lightly. In a daze, she opened her eyes. She looked at Jiang Jewel with a look full of confusion. Xianxia made a slight movement, ready to sit up. The cloth on her body immediately slipped down her fragrant shoulders, exposing her beautiful snow-white body completely in front of Jiang Jewel. Jiang Jewel looked at Xianxia in disarray in front of him, and involuntarily lowered his gaze slightly. An untimely thought popped into his head. "So big! Does it not hurt when it's usually tied up?" Before Jiang Jewel could react, Xianxia suddenly threw himself into his arms. She then pushed Jiang Jewel down onto the bed. Jiang Jewel panicked and said, "Young master, this is not appropriate. Stay calm." Jiang Jewel wanted to continue saying something. Xianxia used his finger to cover Jiang Jewel's mouth. Then she reached out and started messing around on Jiang Jewel's body. As Xianxia's hand moved down, Jiang Jewel's pupils suddenly dilated, and he shouted loudly, "Wait, don't touch that!" Jiang Jewel quickly reached out and pushed Xianxia away. He said helplessly, "No matter what, I am also a man. If you keep doing this, I won't be human anymore. He looked at Xianxia lying on the bed. Jiang Jewel reached into his arms and pulled out a wax pill. Among them, you can see a strange bug resembling a scorpion and a snail. He said to Xianxia, "Young master, this is the goo poison from the Miao region that a friend gave me. When this goo matures, its toxicity is so strong that even a powerhouse at the 4-layer macrocosmic stage cannot resist it. However, when this goo is young, it can swallow all kinds of poison in the world. I offer this to young master as an antidote for emotional poison. However, if I were to use this goo, I need 1 drop of young master's blood to feed it in order to enter your body without harming the foundation of young master." After saying that, Jiang Jewel then struck a beam of spiritual power at the back of Xianxia's heart, causing his heart to shake violently. The originally confused and deluded mind. At this moment, it's just a brief moment of clarity. Xianxia has not had the chance to figure out his own situation. Just heard a familiar voice coming from behind. "Young master, please close your eyes and concentrate. I am here to save you. Don't think too much." Xianxia heard this voice and knew that the person behind him was Jiang Jewel, although he still had many doubts in his mind. But she trusted Jiang Jewel. She still closed her eyes. In the next moment, a drop of blood appeared on Xianxia's finger. Jiang Jewel shouted loudly, "Open your mouth." Xianxia immediately opened his mouth. Jiang Jewel casually placed the wax pill into Xianxia's mouth. After a moment, Xianxia felt the dizziness in his mind slowly dissipating. Xianxia slowly turned his head to look back. He found a shabby old man standing behind him and was momentarily speechless. Jiang Jewel saw her reaction after it. He smiled and his luck changed back to his original appearance. Then he explained to Xianxia, "Something happened, so I disguised myself a bit." Xianxia saw that it was indeed Jiang Jewel. She had just taken a deep breath when she looked down and realized that she was standing naked and talking to Jiang Jewel at the moment. Then she remembered what had just happened, Xianxia's face gradually turning red and her whole body going numb as if she were petrified. Jiang Jewel felt that the atmosphere was not quite right, so she quickly waved her hand and said, "The situation is urgent. I had no choice but to do this. I hope young master can forgive me. Even if you are angry, please wait until we leave this place before seeking me out to hold me accountable." Xianxia dared not look at Jiang Jewel. She stuttered and said, "I know, it's not your fault, sir. Are you married?" Jiang Jewel was a little dumbfounded by Xianxia's question and took a while to come back to his senses. He awkwardly laughed and said, "After all, I am a cultivator and cannot easily fall in love." Xianxia asked seriously, "Sir, wasn't the goo detoxifying pill given to me by sir's beloved?" Jiang Jewel replied even more awkwardly, "That was just a joke. My sweetheart is only 8 years old this year." Xianxia nodded and seemed lost in thought with his head lowered. Jiang Jewel quickly urged, "Young master, it's dangerous here. Let's leave first and talk later." Xianxia smiled bitterly and said, "I don't have any strength left in my body. I'm afraid I can't even stand up. If you have a way, please leave first." "You don't have to worry about me," Jiang Jewel said. "I have my own way." With that, he offended young master, and immediately grabbed Xianxia's waist and lifted him up. Then Jiang Jewel took out a yellow talisman and chanted, "5 ghosts make way. 5 spirits shield my body." Swift. Soon after, a gust of wind rose, and the 2 figures disappeared without a trace. Yusu Xian was lying on a long chair in the graceful Heart Palace, lost in contemplation. The Blackback General of Jade Splendor River. I haven't been able to get in touch for a long time. A few days ago, there was a flood at Jade Splendor River. Could it be that the old turtle is undergoing calamity crossing? How dare it? Without the enfeeblement of the human emperor, its karma alone is afraid that it has already vanished. Its death doesn't matter, but it has ruined my plans. Who else can help me catch people now? Xian intended to attract a large number of refugees under the name of constructing Leopard House, and secretly capture a group of people, but was blocked by Grand Tutor Lin Xianfeng and Imperial Prince Chen Saki joining forces. This time she wanted to use the guise of summoning Daoist An for refining to deal with that Chen Saki, but who knew that Chen Saki turned out to be a woman. However, she thought that at present, Chen Saki is having a great time with a sloppy old man, which immediately lifted Xian's spirits. But at this moment, Xian felt a chill and sat up straight, surprised. Is this the god-inviting technique? She immediately noticed that the chill was coming from the direction where Chen Saki was being held. In her heart, she wondered, could that beggar be a master? At the thought of this, Xian slapped the armrest with a fierce look on her face and shouted sharply, "Guards, come!" On the other side, inside the residence of Prince Jiang Jewel and Chen Saki arrived here after leaving Graceful Heart Palace. Jiang Jewel slowly placed Chen Saki by the bed and said, "This is where I stay in the mansion. It should be safe here." Jiang Jewel finished speaking. He then turned around and bowed to the 5 spiritual lights around body and the 5 shadow mists outside body. He said gratefully, "Thank you all for your help. Please accept these small gifts as a token of my gratitude." Shortly after, a faint golden light emanated from Jiang Jewel's body, sending out a few strands that were divided by the 5 spiritual lights and 5 shadow mists. This object was the manifestation of Jiang Jewel's own merits. Chen Saki looked at the divine technique displayed by Jiang Jewel in front of him. She admired in her heart, "Tur is truly a person of the divine technique." The god-inviting technique invites both the 5 deities and the 5 ghosts. They are all orthodox methods of divine invocation, but there is a cost to summoning these deities. He previously used Celestial Venerable of Profound Thunder Arts to deal with the Blackback General and took away half of the Jiang Jewel's merit. Now with 5 deities and 5 ghosts, some merit has been shared to send off, further leading to the biggest threshold of this technique being that only those with significant merit can practice this path. After sending off the 5 deities and 5 ghosts, Jiang Jewel spoke to Chen Saki and said, "Since the young master is now safe, I shall take my leave first." Chen Saki instinctively reached out and grabbed Jiang Jewel's sleeve. She whispered, "Sir, can you stay and accompany me for a while? I also want to exchange some information with you." Jiang Jewel was slightly taken aback, smiled and said, "All right, I don't have any other plans anyway." Then the two of them arrived at Chen Saki's study. After a moment, Chen Saki whispered, "According to the information Mr. Jiang provided, I need to write a letter. Please invite the current Grand Tutor, Lin Xianfeng, to the mansion for discussion. I will have my trusted subordinate deliver the letter to the Grand Tutor's mansion right away." Jiang Jewel spoke up, "Young master, let me handle this." Shortly after, Jiang Jewel unleashed a divine technique. A gust of wind came up, and the letter in Chen Saki's hand disappeared. Seeing Chen Saki's puzzled expression, Jiang Jewel said, "Young master, rest assured, the letter has now arrived in the hands of the Grand Tutor." Chen Saki's cheeks turned slightly red as he said, I naturally trust Mr. Jiang." As the twilight fell and night deepened, Jiang Jewel accompanied Chen Saki in the study until late into the night. Although the atmosphere was a bit awkward at first, Jiang Jewel didn't mind at the beginning. However, Chen Saki, blushing and furtively stealing glances at him, made Jiang Jewel unable to resist. Jiang Jewel couldn't help but ask, "Young master, is there something you want to ask?" Chen Saki turned back in panic and said, No, nothing." Chen Saki regretted leaving Jiang Jewel behind in her heart. What should be done when a man and a woman are alone at this time? Just when Chen Saki's mind was filled with thousands of thoughts, Jiang Jewel suddenly appeared behind Chen Saki and softly asked, "Young master, are you really okay? Your face is so red." Chen Saki looked nervously at the suddenly appearing Jiang Jewel and couldn't say a word. At this moment, a servant outside the door shouted, "Imperial Prince Grand Tutor Lin is here." Xianxia quickly said, "Please, please come in, Grand Tutor Lin." The Jiang Jewel by his side immediately bowed and said, "Young master, then I will take my leave first." Xianxia hurriedly said, "Sir, there's no need for you to leave." Jiang Jewel said with a smile, firmly stating, "Each has their own strengths and weaknesses, young master. Please don't make things difficult for me." Jiang Jewel knew clearly that Xianxia would sooner or later confront Yusuxian. Maybe she had conspired with Grand Tutor Lin long ago. If he didn't leave now, he wouldn't be able to stay out of it in the future. Xianxia's eyes showed a hint of regret as she said, "Okay. Today has been tiring, sir. Please go rest." When Jiang Jewel exited the study, he saw someone walking quickly on the other side of the corridor. The approaching person is none other than the current Grand Tutor Lin Xianfeng. This is also the first time Jiang Jewel has met Grand Tutor Lin Xianfeng. He stepped aside and bowed to pay his respects. When Lin Xianfeng passed by Jiang Jewel, he nodded in greeting before walking past. Jiang Jewel looked up at Lin Xianfeng's departing figure, his eyes shimmering with a glint of light. He then let out a soft sigh, saying, "It's also a sign of short life." At night, inside the graceful Heart Palace in the Imperial Palace, Yusuxian asked with a fierce look on his face, "Did you say that old beggar was brought by you from the underground palace?" The servant kneeling below trembled and replied, "I dare not deceive my lady. The old beggar should have been captured in the palace in recent days. As long as the old beggar is still in Xianying City, he cannot escape. I have already sent someone to capture him." Yusuxian on the phoenix chair remained non-committal. She was also aware that since the person could escape from under her nose, it would not be easy to find him. "It seems that there are indeed many capable individuals around Xianxia," she said. "Forget it, let him run. Xianxia always cannot escape." The servant below immediately said, "Your Highness, if Imperial Prince accuses the king of today's matter," Yusuxian confidently said, "then let her sue me. Since I dare to deal with her like this, I naturally have a way to control her." Yusuxian thought of this. She asked, "Have the people from Xianying Mountain been invited?" The beautiful maid respectfully replied, "They will arrive tomorrow." Yusuxian continued to inquire, "Lord of Heavenly Demons is looking for news about the Jiang Jewel." The beautiful maid immediately said, "This matter will be reported to the mistress. I just found out from the guests at the residence of Prince and that after Imperial Prince had returned from Jade Splendor River, he had a new servant by his side." Few people know the specific name of this person, but everyone in the mansion refers to this person as Sir Jiang. It is said that Sir Jiang is also skilled in divination and fortune-telling. Yusuxian raised an eyebrow and secretly thought, "Could it be that the Lord of Heavenly Demons is looking for someone who is right next to Xianxia?" Residence of Princeton, outside the mansion. The gatekeeper saw Jiang Jewel carrying large and small bags walking towards the residence of Princeton and asked, "Good day, sir. What are you carrying?" Jiang Jewel smiled and replied, "I am going out to visit a friend. I will be back after finishing my business." The junior official looked at Jiang Jewel's attire, which seemed like he was about to flee. Memories of the servants who were invited to the palace before and never returned crossed his mind. The other servants at the mansion were also anxious, with some packing their belongings and leaving in the dead of night. Could it be that Sir Jiang is also planning to flee? But he remembered that the Imperial Prince had given instructions. He can't make things difficult for Sir Jiang, so he sighed and said, "Please take care, sir, and let him go." Jiang Jewel arrived at a mountaintop outside the city. He was thinking how, ever since he crossed into this world, he had been cautious every step of the way. If he hadn't been so careful, he might have been dead long ago. Only now did he think of Xianxia as such a wise lord whose destiny had been wasted. He could no longer stand by and do nothing. Jiang Jewel cut off some black threads of hair from himself. He wrapped them around 3 sticks of incense, holding them with both hands in a gesture of offering. drink Tao. Above the three heavens, where the Tao is supreme, among myriad laws, incense reigns foremost. Now, with 3 incense sticks of merit, we respectfully invite the sacred deities of the 4 directions, the restless spirits from the 8 corners, and send word to the 100 immortals of Nanshan Ridge, to gather in the land of Qin. To those who harbor wishes, we humbly offer incense. Jiang Jewel lit 3 incense sticks in his hand. Smoke rose up, originally with no wind in the weather. Suddenly, a gust of gloomy wind arose. Jiang Jewel turned around and, with a delighted expression, said, "They're here." Then he saw the figure formed by the condensed smoke arriving at the incense burner and continued, "Whether passing by as a demon, a spirit, or even as the wandering soul, a piao, please reveal yourself." Jiang Jewel saw the revealed entity, which should be a Yin soul. It seems that this little Yin soul has no power, but it's quite useful as a messenger. Shortly after, Jiang Jewel and the departing Yin soul said, "Don't forget about your brother's instructions." Residents of Princeton, Qin Saki, came to Jiang Jewel's residence wanting to discuss some matters with Jiang Jewel. He then heard from a servant that Sir Jiang had left early to visit friends outside the city. Qin Saki, feeling puzzled, asked, "Sir Jiang is someone I fished out of the Jade Splendor River, and it's his first time in the Qin Empire. How come he has old friends?" The servant had to truthfully reply, "I saw Sir Jiang leaving with many bags when he went out." Qin Saki couldn't help but smile bitterly. She could not help but think that the enchantress consort was making things difficult for her everywhere, causing her household servants to either die or flee. Even Grand Tutor Lin Xianfeng was powerless, only reminding her to endure. Anyone could see that she was at the end of her rope. Qin Saki lowered her brows and eyes. She gently ran her hand along the edge of the water tank in the courtyard, her mind filled with countless thoughts. She couldn't help but burst into tears. Just at that moment, a familiar voice came from behind Qin Saki. "Young master, are you looking for me?" This voice made Qin Saki shiver and quickly turned to look behind. Behind her, Jiang Jewel stood with a warm smile. Qin Saki rushed to stand in front of Jiang Jewel immediately. She grabbed Jiang Jewel's hands. Her eyes widened in surprise as she asked, "Sir, why are you still here?" Jiang Jewel was suddenly at a loss. "Young master, what do you mean? Am I not here at young master's arrangement? Could it be that young master doesn't want me to stay?" Qin Saki immediately replied, "No, no, no. The gentleman can stay in this courtyard as long as he wants." Jiang Jewel cleared his throat and apologized for scratching his head, saying, "Young master, bystanders might have thought you caught a thief." Qin Saki then realized her overstep, and her cheeks turned red. She quickly let go and said, "I'm sorry." Late at night in the study room, Qin Saki said to Jiang Jewel, "I heard someone say that you went out to visit a friend. I thought you. Did you meet this old friend during this trip?" Jiang Jewel replied vaguely, "The old friend is not in Xianying City. When he went out, he just asked someone to pass on a message, inviting him to the mansion for a chat." Qin Saki just wondered about Jiang Jewel's old friend. What kind of person is she? She felt the house shaking constantly. Jiang Jewel said lightly, "Young master, don't be afraid. It's just that person who has arrived." Qin Saki nervously asked, "Who? Who has come?" Jiang Jewel chuckled lightly while sipping tea. "Of course. An old friend." Qin Saki sensed that something seemed to be approaching from outside. She then opened the door and looked outside, only to see a snow-white cat sitting at the doorway. Before Qin Saki could react, the cat walked in swaggeringly before Qin Saki could react. Jiang Jewel waved his hand and exclaimed, "Well, well, look who little Yin Soul has invited. It seems this trip was not in vain. Long time no see." "You don't have to be so indifferent. My old friend, Little Mountain Lord." Seeing such a cute little mountain lord, Qin Saki is excited to personally go down to prepare cat food for it. After Chin Saki left, the little mountain lord lazily lay on top of the desk. Jiang Jewel softly said, "In the past, I stayed in the southern heavenly mountain range for half a month, but the little mountain lord avoided me. Why did he personally come to Xianyang to help me?" The little mountain lord did not reply to Jiang Jewel. Instead, he disdainfully pushed away the tea poured by Jiang Jewel with the back of his hand. Jiang Jewel shrugged it off and continued. "There were things that I didn't understand at the time, but now it's clear. On that day, when Little Mountain Lord deliberately led me to Jade Splendor River to see the bird with the back mark, was there also an intention to test me?" Upon hearing this, Little Mountain Lord just calmly said, "If you don't say anything, the old turtle won't dare to act rashly. But you've made your words so definitive. If you fall into the water because of it, you can't blame me." After a pause, Little Mountain Lord continued, "I was born with unique eyes. My left eye sees the good and evil in people's hearts, and my right eye glimpses the karmic opportunities. Yet, I can never fully understand you. Would it be excessive for me to probe a little? You have once calculated the divine destiny for many living beings in the southern heavenly mountain range, which can be considered a favor. Now you are sending the little Een soul to deliver a message seeking help for the southern heavenly mountain range. We will definitely do our utmost to assist." Jiang Jewel looks out the window at the many figures outside. He said gratefully, "I didn't expect so many friends to come. I've troubled everyone. Please stay at the mansion for now." As soon as the words fell, after the many figures outside the window responded and obeyed, they instantly disappeared and dissipated. On the other side, inside Graceful Heart Palace, Yusuxian asked, "May I know the whereabouts of that Jiang Jewel?" The maid replied, "Reporting to your highness, it has been confirmed that Sir Jiang is currently at the residence of Princeton." However, the maid failed to enter the courtyard of Sir Jiang, despite attempting to sneak in a few times at night. Yusuxian was surprised. "Has your cultivation level reached the 6th layer that you can't even see his face?" The servant trembled in fear. There are several powerful Yaoguai guarding the courtyard, all of them stronger than this servant. Yusuxian, upon hearing this, thought to herself, "It seems that this Sir Jiang is the person the Lord of Heavenly Demons is looking for. However, the other party's cultivation level is unfathomable." She then remembered that the devoted sword slave would arrive in the Qin Empire in a few days, and she would deal with this, Sir Jiang, herself. She need not worry about it anymore, she thought. Yusuxian then asked, "How is White Jade True Taoist doing?" White Jade True Taoist is the Taoist Master Chui by Chin Saki's side. The maid replied, "He has submitted. He is willing to obey everything the mistress says." Yusuxian smiled and said, "Very well. It is time to send a big gift to Imperial Princeton." On this day, Emperor Wu of Qin, who had not dealt with court affairs for several years, rarely held a court meeting. Emperor Wu of Qin sat on the dragon throne. He listened to the servant's report. "Your Majesty, recently the entire Xianyang city is filled with the scent of medicine. The withered old trees have sprouted new shoots, various flowers bloom brightly regardless of the season, and strange phenomena occur frequently. It is feared that..." At this moment, the guard outside the door loudly exclaimed, "The queen has arrived!" Yusuxian is wearing a thin and light green shirt and a long skirt. She gracefully walked in from the hall, followed by a beautiful maid holding a small wooden box in both hands. Imperial Princeton and Grand Tutor Lin Xianfeng were both puzzled as to why the enchantress consort had come here at this time, with a faint sense of unease in their hearts. At this moment, Yusuxian had already arrived in front of Emperor Wu of Qin. She lowered her eyes and said loudly, "Celestial Dan is complete and will be presented to the king today. Wishing the king a long life that matches the heavens and eternal prosperity." Emperor Wu of Qin looks at the beloved consort. He happily walked down from the long chair and came to Yusuxian's side, helping her up. Yusuxian picked up the wooden box containing the Dan pill. She handed the pill to Emperor Wu of Qin with a charming voice, saying, "Your Majesty, please take the medicine. Emperor Wu of Qin picked up the Dan pill from the wooden box. He lifted Yusu Xian's chin with his left hand and whispered, "The poison given by my beloved Fei is as sweet as candy to me." Emperor Wu of Qin then, in front of all civil and military officials in the court, swallowed the Dan pill. However, the next second, Emperor Wu of Qin suddenly broke out in cold sweat, his veins bulged, and he was unable to speak. Qin Saki below saw this situation. She turned pale and walked forward, just as Qin Saki ordered the guards to capture Yusu Xian. Emperor Wu of Qin whispered softly, "Wait, wait, beloved consort, beloved consort." Yusu Xian heard the sound and walked up to Emperor Wu of Qin. She smiled and asked, "Your Majesty, how is the effect of the divine Dan pill?" Emperor Wu of Qin at this moment only felt a warm stream circulating in his body, surging out endless strength. He then laughed loudly. "I feel refreshed and invigorated." All civil and military officials in the audience were amazed and shocked to see the extraordinary skills of Yusu Xian. They all knelt down and shouted in unison, "Long live the Emperor, the auspicious sign of the country!" Qin Saki and Grand Tutor Lin Xiafeng on the side both had slightly grim expressions. They didn't expect Yusu Xian to have truly mastered the celestial Dan. With this, Yusu Xian's power grew stronger. Emperor Wu of Qin felt very pleased. He embraced Yusu Xian and softly said, "This is all thanks to my beloved consort. What reward does my beloved consort desire?" Yusu Xian lowered her eyes and smiled gently, saying, "Your Majesty, you praise me too highly. I dare not ask for anything, but I have something to say. Recently, I, your humble servant, have been praying for blessings for the Qin Empire night after night. When I witnessed the purple star fall to the north, I was certain it was a sign guided by the purple star emperor. The prosperity of our Qin Empire is imminent. Your Majesty should dispatch General Cui to lead the Qin army northward. Capture the Wei Empire in one fell swoop. With this auspicious sign, our Qin army will surely break through the Wei Empire like a piece of rotten wood, and the great Qin will also rise to great prominence in the world." Emperor Wu of Qin had not yet spoken. Qin Saki behind him frowned upon hearing this and angrily retorted, "Nonsense!" She then bowed and looked towards Emperor Wu of Qin, saying, "Brother Emperor, the military campaign requires a large amount of military funds. However, in recent years, there have been frequent disasters, and the people are starving. In addition, the construction of the imperial harem is consuming a huge amount of resources, and the national treasury is already empty. Under such internal troubles, sending soldiers to fight on empty stomachs will only lead to loss of popular and military support. If the people and the army lose faith, even the foundation of the Qin Empire will be in jeopardy. The decision to go to war must not be taken lightly." Yusu Xian said softly, "I am just conveying the instructions of the Purple Star Emperor, but Lord Imperial Princeton has doubts. Gentlemen, why don't you also speak up? Do you question the will of the heavens? Or is it that you also want to slander me?" Then all the officials present were well aware that the celestial Dan refined by Yusu Xian for Emperor Wu of Qin was in favor at the moment. No one dared to speak out against it. They all bowed and said, "We dare not oppose Qin Saki." Seeing the flattering attitudes of all the officials in the court, she was so angry that she couldn't speak for a moment. Emperor Wu of Qin laughed and said, "Regarding the matter of going to war, if it pleases my beloved consort, Qin Saki it shall be." Upon hearing that Emperor Wu of Qin actually agreed to go to war, she wanted to continue advising against it. But before she could speak, Emperor Wu of Qin frowned and said, "Imperial Princeton, you can't keep quiet. I have already made the decision. Tomorrow, I will issue the order for General Cui to immediately attack the Wei Empire." Qin Saki heard Emperor Wu of Qin speaking like this. She knew that it was useless to say anything more at this point. She frowned and looked at the powerful Yusu Xian. At this moment, Yusu Xian suddenly spoke. "Just because of the sincerity of His Highness Imperial Princeton, I have also prepared a great gift for him. It's a divine pill. Actually, I refined 2 pills, Yusa Xian paused. She continued with a slight smile at the corner of her mouth. By the way, Imperial Prince and doesn't know about refining the elixir? He could have greatly distinguished himself. Saki looked at Celestial Dan in front of him in surprise. For a moment, he didn't know what medicine Yusa Xian was selling in the gourd. On the other side, at the residence of Prince N, the little mountain lord is currently lying on Jiang Jewel's legs, leisurely basking in the sun. Suddenly, a whiff of medicinal fragrance wafted over. Jiang Jewel's nostrils flared, looking puzzled as he asked, "What's that smell? It's so fragrant." While the little mountain lord on his leg, with narrowed pupils, in a deep voice said, "Such a strong blood-killing qi." Jiang Jewel asked softly, "Isn't this the sin of medicine? Why does Little Mountain Lord say it's blood-killing qi?" Little Mountain Lord didn't explain, just said, "See it with your own eyes. The young lady has arrived." The words have just fallen. Just saw Saki holding a wooden box in his hands from a distance, and walking towards this side anxiously. Jiang Jewel quickly stood up and asked, "Why is young master flustered?" Saki explained, "Today, the enchantress consort presented this item to me. I find it suspicious and have specially come to ask for Mister's guidance." Jiang Jewel looked at the Dan pill in the box. His facial expression changed suddenly. He said softly, "Young master, you better take a look yourself." Jiang Jewel then pointed with a finger, and the originally invisible thing gradually revealed itself in front of Saki, only to see on top of the bright red Dan pill, faces began to appear one by one. Faintly, countless voices were heard. "Imperial Princeton, help us! Young master, avenge us! Save me! Save me!" Saki looked at the pale faces in front of him. For a moment, he did not notice the object under his feet and collapsed to the ground. Jiang Jewel, upon seeing this, immediately reached out to dispel that soul. Then he helped up Saki and said softly, "Just now those were illusory images of lost souls trapped in this Dan pill, unable to truly harm anyone. Young master, do not be afraid." Jiang Jewel looked towards the Dan pill beside him and continued, "Mortals who consume this Dan pill can circulate their qi and blood, increase their lifespan, and never suffer from illness or calamity again. However, the refining process of this Dan pill requires the sacrifice of a living person, with their 7 souls and 6 essences cast into the alchemical furnace, and their internal organs turned into medicinal residue." Upon hearing Jiang Jewel's explanation, Saki clutched herself tightly, trembling all over, and said, "I recognize them. The souls just now, many of them used to be servants in my mansion, and some were commoners who lost their homes in disasters. I have helped them before. I'm sorry, I was not able to protect you," Saki said as she burst into tears. Upon seeing this, Jiang Jewel sighed heavily. He gently wiped away the tears on Saki's face and said, "Silly girl, shedding tears alone will not save your people." Upon hearing this, Saki was startled. Whispering in her mouth, My people," Jiang Jewel replied lightly. I wonder how a female imperial prince like you, who selects talents and governs well, would fare if the Qin Empire no longer existed?" After a moment of silence, Saki's gaze became resolute, her hands clenched into fists. For the sake of her own people, she was willing to fight with all her might. The morning of the second day, Saki stood outside Jiang Jewel with slightly red cheeks, just as she hesitated in her heart. Jiang Jewel called out from behind, "Young master, is that you?" Saki was startled by the sudden voice and froze in place. She turned around nervously. She handed the item to Jiang Jewel and said, "Sir, please take this." Jiang Jewel looked puzzled and said to Saki, "Is this new clothes?" Saki said hesitantly, "Last time I saw you coming back, it seemed like your clothes were torn, so I had a tailor make a Jiang Jewel for you." Taking the clothes, he smiled and said, "Thank you very much, young master." After a long silence, Jiang Jewel sighed softly and asked, "Young master, are you going to the palace? Do you have confidence in this trip?" Chin Saki lowered his eyebrows and replied faintly, "I am not confident, but for the people of Qin Empire, I am willing to take a risk." Jiang Jewel knew that Chin Saki had made up his mind and did not persuade him further. Instead, he said, "Understood. Since it's the case, I won't advise any further. Before we part ways, I have one last thing to remind you. If young master encounters an unsolvable situation, silently recite in your heart the true lord of the grand void from the celestial realm of purple firmament. Young master, remember this." Chin Saki nodded slightly upon hearing these words. She then left gracefully. In the back garden of the palace, Emperor Wu of Qin dreamed of the late emperor sitting on the dragon throne, conducting an examination on Emperor Wu of Qin's knowledge of governing the country. Emperor Wu of Qin always stumbled over his words when facing the late emperor's questions. He couldn't explain the reasons. He just fearfully lowered his head deeply. The former emperor had a stern face, ready to reprimand Emperor Wu of Qin. The young Chin Saki, however, easily stated the answer. The former emperor was very pleased with Chin Saki's answer and praised his exceptional talent and intelligence. Just sighed and lamented the pity that Chin Saki is a woman. The former emperor then looked down at the trembling Emperor Wu of Qin kneeling below. The former emperor angrily rebuked, "You simply have no talent for governing the country." Emperor Wu of Qin woke up from his dream, his face covered in cold sweat, and asked the eunuch beside him, Did I fall asleep? I must not miss the dance performance by my beloved concubine." The eunuch leaned forward and replied, "Your Majesty, rest assured, the dance performance has not started yet, but I have important news to report." After a pause, the eunuch whispered with a face full of cold sweat, "Your Majesty, the front line is retreating steadily due to shortage of provisions, and there have been desertions among the soldiers. General Cui is on the verge of collapse." When Emperor Wu of Qin heard this, he was stunned and said, "Desertions among the soldiers? How is that possible?" Before the eunuch could respond, Yu Xian, who had approached unnoticed, slapped the eunuch in the face and angrily scolded, "You worthless thing! Spouting nonsense here! Guards! Drag this useless eunuch away and behead him." Yu Xian held Emperor Wu of Qin's hand and smiled charmingly, saying, "Your Majesty, why are you still hesitating? The song and dance performance is about to begin. The dancers this time are all stunning beauties." Upon hearing this, Emperor Wu of Qin did not inquire further, but followed Yu Xian as they walked outside. At this moment, another eunuch came before Emperor Wu of Qin, trembling, and said, "Reporting to your Majesty, Imperial Prince and Chin Saki and Lord Lin Xianfeng have intruded into the harem. I couldn't stop them, The eunuch swallowed nervously, unable to continue. Just as Emperor Wu of Qin was about to inquire further. Just then, Chin Saki, Lin Xianfeng, and the others all entered wearing mourning attire. Shortly after, several people respectfully knelt in front of Emperor Wu of Qin. Emperor Wu of Qin looked at Chin Saki and the others in front of him, not angry but smiling, and said, "Good, good, good. Are you wearing mourning attire because you want to curse me to die?" Chin Saki replied with a cupped hand gesture, "We are wearing mourning attire for the unjust deaths of the people of the Qin Empire, and wearing mourning for the imminent downfall of the country." Emperor Wu of Qin sneered in reply, "I want to hear how this imminent downfall of the country is supposed to happen." Chin Saki looked at Yu Xian next to him and said angrily, "Enchantress consort Yu Xian treats human lives as trivial by practicing live person damn refining, not only engaging in debauchery in the harem, but also spreading deceitful words, inciting wars. She should be immediately thrown into the celestial prison." Before Emperor Wu of Qin could speak, Chin Saki and the others spoke in unison. "If Enchantress consort is not removed, we officials ask to resign and return home without asking about state affairs." Emperor Wu of Qin, hearing the resolute attitude of Chin Saki and the others, couldn't help but be stunned and said angrily, "Is this how it is? Are you trying to force me out of the palace?" Yu Xian, who had remained silent all along, whispered at this moment, "Gentlemen, each of you holds high positions of power, yet you want to use your authority to force the king to comply and humiliate a weak woman like me?" Xian paused for a moment, took out a small booklet from her bosom, and then continued with a change of tone. "But I think we can skip that. Recently, I received a booklet which contains letters of rebellion and treason between Imperial Prince and Grand Tutor Lin Xianfeng." Upon hearing this, Qin Saki furrowed his brows and angrily exclaimed, "Nonsense! Grand Tutor Lin and I have always been loyal to the great Qin. How could there be any thoughts of rebellion? You, enchantress consort!" Xian, upon hearing this, she casually clapped her hands. She said lightly, "By the way, I am a witness. Bring White Jade True Taoist and Taoist Master Chui here." Qin Saki looked surprised at the moment, and saw Taoist Master Chui with his head hanging low, his hands shackled, looking very messy, and not daring to look at Qin Saki. Taoist Master Chui came to Emperor Wu of Qin, knelt down with a numb expression and said, "This humble one pleads guilty. Qin Saki has long harbored ambitious intentions, hoarding food and raising troops while in the fief, plotting rebellion." Qin Saki listened to Taoist Master Chui's words. She looked at him in disbelief. She just murmured in her mouth, "Why? Why?" Her relationship with Taoist Master Chui is not only that of master and servant, but also one of intimate friends. Yet this kind of person is betraying her at this moment. Qin Saki feels as if something inside her heart has been shattered. Taoist Master Chui listened to Qin Saki's absent-minded murmur, took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, it's difficult to be both loyal and righteous." Emperor Wu of Qin held a small book in his hand and asked sternly, "Qin Saki, what is your explanation for this?" Qin Saki sneered and replied, "Imperial brother, if I were to say it was a plot by the enchantress consort, would you believe me?" Emperor Wu of Qin trembled slightly upon hearing these words. After a moment of silence, he said in a low voice, "Send Imperial Prince into the Court of Judicial Review for detention, awaiting further punishment." As soon as Emperor Wu of Qin finished speaking, Lin Xianfeng, who was kneeling in front, suddenly stood up and angrily shouted at Emperor Wu of Qin, "Emperor Wu of Qin, how could the former emperor have passed the throne to you? Before he could finish speaking, Xian on the side immediately rebuked, "Treason! Treason! What are you waiting for? Seize that old fool at once!" The guards, upon hearing this, immediately attempted to bring Lin Xianfeng down. Emperor Wu of Qin raised his hand and pointed towards Lin Xianfeng, intending to say something. He saw Qin Saki staring at him with wide eyes. Qin Saki then loudly scolded, "Your Majesty, you simply lack the ability to govern the country." Emperor Wu of Qin, upon hearing this, immediately widened his eyes, opened his mouth in shock, and was speechless. After a moment of silence, Emperor Wu of Qin weakly said, "Forget it, I am tired. Let the beloved concubine handle everything." After that, he left the place. After Emperor Wu of Qin left, Xian chuckled and said, "The king is indeed such an important matter. Leave it to others to handle. What should we do about this?" Xian paused and then said with a playful expression, "Let's settle it in a duel tomorrow." Upon hearing this, Lin Xianfeng shielded Qin Saki behind him and angrily rebuked, "You enchantress consort! If you dare to lay a finger on Imperial Prince today, I'll fight you all." As soon as Lin Xianfeng's words fell, a guard threw a long spear that harshly pierced Lin Xianfeng. Qin Saki looked dazedly with blank eyes. Lin Xianfeng died to protect himself. She kept trembling all over. At this time, Xian came to Qin Saki and smiled lightly, saying, "Your Highness Princeton, are you satisfied with the gift that this palace has sent?" That night, thousands of imperial guards broke into the residence of Princeton and killed all the servants and attendants. The sound of wailing and begging for mercy filled the air. At the same time, on the other side, 2 maids from Yusuxian came to the door of Jiang Jewel's room and lightly knocked, saying, "Sir Jiang, are you there? My lady requests your presence." After waiting for a moment, there was no response from inside the room. The 2 then opened the door and walked in, only to see that Jiang Jewel's room was already empty. They realized that Jiang Jewel had escaped. Subsequently, they left and went back to Yusuxian to report. The next day, news had already spread throughout Xianying City that Emperor Wu of Qin was going to execute Imperial Prince and at Meridian Gate today. So many common people had gathered early outside the palace gate. When the time came, the palace gate slowly opened. A figure slowly emerged from within. And this person is none other than the Imperial Prince in Xianxia, who is about to be executed by questioning. Beside Jiang Jewel stood a massive creature resembling a deer, with feet like wolf claws, covered in scales. It is none other than Little Mountain Lord. Originally, the appearance of Little Mountain Lord was a divine beast of auspiciousness in the mountains, Jade Kirin, with mismatched pupils, one in green jade color and the other in reddish gold. It has 2 long tails swaying behind its body. Little Mountain Lord asked Jiang Jewel in confusion, "I say, is there really such foolish and ignorant person in this world, who knowingly seeks death yet desires to go forward?" Jiang Jewel replied softly, "In her heart, righteousness is more important than life itself." Little Mountain Lord continued thoughtfully, "Are you also a person with noble ideals?" Jiang Jewel shook her head upon hearing the question. He chuckled lightly and said, "I am just an ordinary person." He then looked up and spoke out towards the distance. "Just here. It's truly a picturesque and beautiful place. Let's prepare the divine destiny ceremony here for you." Inside the palace, Emperor Wu of Qin is currently asleep on the bed. His face is filled with a look of pain. His body keeps trembling. The cold sweat on his forehead also keeps pouring out uncontrollably. And on the other side, Yusuxian couldn't help but shed tears when she saw Emperor Wu of Qin in such pain. The maid beside Yusuxian was shocked when she saw it and asked in astonishment, "Madam, are you crying?" Yusuxian adjusted her emotions and replied softly, "No, I'm fine. Let's hurry to the execution ground." After saying that, she walked out and asked as she walked, "Is there still no news from devoted sword slave?" The maid replied respectfully, "No, but that person surnamed Jiang hasn't appeared either." Yusuxian nodded slightly. After a moment, she arrived at the city tower outside the palace. Yusuxian heard a commotion below the tower and asked in confusion, "Why is it so noisy?" The maid bowed nervously and replied, "Reporting to your highness, a large number of citizens have gathered in front of the execution grounds. It's already crowded with people, and they are all expressing anger, saying, 'How could Imperial Prince and rebel? This is impossible. Is the current emperor really blind?' Even Grand Tutor Lin has suffered a cruel fate. This Qin Empire can't go on like this." With more and more people voicing their support for Xianxia. The soldiers who maintain order are also becoming nervous. And Yusuxian on the city tower furrowed his brows tightly, feeling a growing sense of unease. Yusuxian knew that if the people's emotions continued to escalate, a riot was bound to happen. Therefore, Yusuxian immediately instructed the maidservant beside him to issue the execution order. They could not afford to wait any longer. Kneeling on the high platform, Xianxia gazed into the distance with vacant eyes, her heart reminiscing about the farewell message from Jiang Jewel. Unconsciously, she murmured under her breath, "The true lord of the grand void." From the purple firmament is a primordial deity from the dawn of creation. The Jiang Jewel in the distance is now located in the middle of the altar. A voice suddenly resounded in his mind. His expression turned solemn, knowing that it was time. The next moment, the Jiang Jewel pointed to the right hand and gestured like a sword. The system prompt appeared in front of the Jiang Jewel. Do you want to alter the fate of Xianxia? Altering fate requires the consumption of 100,000 merit points. Current merit points for Xianxia, 74535. Upon seeing this prompt, Jiang Jewel couldn't help but sigh. Qin Saki has devoted a lifetime of effort for the Qin Empire, accumulating considerable merit points, yet still unable to change fate. At this moment, the system once again shows a prompt. You can choose to spend 100,000 merit points to alter fate. Current merit points, 101,252. Without hesitation, Jiang Jewel chooses to make up for the lacking merit points for Qin Saki. The system then prompted, 74,535 merit points have been deducted from Qin Saki, and 25,465 merit points have been deducted from you. You have successfully rewritten the fate of Qin Saki. And at the same time, Little Mountain Lord's hair stood on end in an instant, looking at Jiang Jewel with an incredulous expression, as the figure of Jiang Jewel was reflected in his unusual eyes. It saw the karmic lines that were originally entwined around Jiang Jewel's body. The red thread connecting Qin Saki had almost broken, but at this moment, this red thread suddenly strengthened and became extremely resilient. Little Mountain Lord's heart was filled with doubt as he wondered. The gentleman is clearly a human race cultivator without a trace of incense chi, so how could he have a divine honorific title? The baffled Little Mountain Lord's conviction in Jiang Jewel being a divine being grew even stronger at this moment. On the other side, inside Xianying City, the beheaded Qin Saki did not experience the imagined scene of blood spattering and internal organs flowing. Instead, there were creatures resembling mountain elves, emerging from the severed head and limbs of Qin Saki. The onlookers, with faces full of astonishment, believed that the righteous act of Imperial Prince has moved the heavens. It was the immortal's actions that saved Imperial Prince. Then all the people knelt down on the ground. At this moment, the Little Mountain Lord is flying towards us carrying the Jiang Jewel, and auspicious clouds are forming wherever he steps. Wherever he passes, all the people kneel down and pray for blessings. When the Jiang Jewel drifts above the execution platform, Yusuxian on the city tower above is suddenly shocked. She knows this person in her heart. He is the person she is looking for, Jiang Jewel. Jiang Jewel on the execution platform looked at the surrounding people and shouted, "Citizens of Qin Empire, your General Cui has withdrawn from the battlefield of Wei Empire, and is leading 100,000 Qin army troops back to Xianying. If you also love this land, please help me as well. Fight to overthrow tyranny." Upon hearing Jiang Jewel's words, Yusuxian on the city tower gritted his teeth and said, "This despicable evil Taoist! Why doesn't devoted sword slave come to help me? Could it be the intention of Lord of Heavenly Demons? What's really going on?" At this moment, Jiang Jewel looked at Yusuxian and softly said, "The tides of empire ever turn. What is long divided must unite, and what is long united must divide. Yusuxian, you concoct demonic Dan, bewitched Emperor Wu of Qin, executed Imperial Prince and purged your rivals. You probably intend to seize the fate of the Qin Empire for yourself. But why don't you see who the people are currently swayed towards? Where is Empire's fate now?" On the execution platform, Jiang Jewel's expression turned serious. He bowed towards the Imperial Palace and shouted, "Please grant an audience to the sovereign of the Qin Empire." The voice was soft and deep, reverberating throughout the entire Imperial Palace. Inside the sleeping chamber, Emperor Wu of Qin sat up from the bed, his expression stunned. Jiang Jewel's voice echoed in his mind. Then he got up and picked up his sword. He rushed out of the palace in a panic. A moment later, Emperor Wu of Qin arrived at the top of the city wall and heard the loud murmur of the people below. He anxiously asked, "My dear, what's going on?" At this moment, Yusuxian finally noticed that Emperor Wu of Qin had also arrived here. Before she could speak, a maid standing beside her said, "There is an evil Taoist spreading rumors and inciting the people to riot. Your Majesty, the city walls are not safe." Emperor Wu of Qin frowned upon hearing this and looked closely at Jiang Jewel below the city wall. Jiang Jewel saw that the newcomer was protected by the Red Long, and immediately knew that this person was the notorious Emperor Wu of Qin. At this moment, Emperor Wu of Qin angrily said, "An outsider! not focusing on cultivation in the deep mountains. You also dare to meddle in state affairs of this dynasty. What brings you looking for me? Jiang Jewel bowed and said, I am a wandering fortune teller who travels through the streets of the Qin Empire. When I first entered Xianying, a red long appeared in my dream. The red long asked me to cast a glance at how the emperor of the Qin Empire is, and how the future of the Qin Empire would be. Please, your highness, lend me a personal item. Emperor Wu of Qin felt a chill in his heart on top of the city wall, wondering how the people below knew about the whereabouts of the red long. Moreover, could it be true that Qin Saki and Grand Tutor Lin's predictions would come true? At the next moment, Emperor Wu of Qin denied this thought, firmly believing that the red long was still protecting the great Qin. How could they really think they knew nothing about the fate of the empire? Initially, he even wanted to give them a way out. These despicable people deserve to die. Emperor Wu of Qin took off a jade pendant from his waist. He threw it to Jiang Jewel, his voice cold. You must also be a remnant of Qin Saki and the others, right? I really want to hear how you can deduce the fate of my great Qin Empire. Jiang Jewel reached out and took the jade pendant. The system prompts, is it for Qin Wu to deduce divine destiny? This deduction will cost 1 million divine destiny points. The cost of deduction is not insignificant. However, Jiang Jewel has already received compensation from elsewhere. So he chose yes, without hesitation. As numerous messages flooded into Jiang Jewel's mind, Jiang Jewel gazed deeply at Emperor Wu of Qin. He said in a cold tone, Fathers devour their sons, sons slay their fathers. Lords execute their ministers, and ministers rise against their sovereigns. The state is no longer a state. The great Qin is doomed to fall. His voice was like thunder. With a single word, he ended the fate of the Qin Empire. Upon hearing these words, Emperor Wu of Qin was instantly enraged. He pointed his finger at Jiang Jewel and angrily shouted at the guards on both sides. How dare this impostor deceive the public? Capture this evil Taoist for me! The attendants surrounding quickly brandished their swords and moved forward aggressively, intending to apprehend Jiang Jewel for questioning. But just as they approached, the ground suddenly roiled beneath them. A giant green snake, stretching hundreds of feet long, burst out of the ground. It protected Jiang Jewel and Little Mountain Lord behind it, spitting out words while coldly glaring at the surrounding soldiers with its vertical pupils. Just as everyone was feeling fearful and intimidated. Emperor Wu of Qin, however, showed no fear at all and angrily rebuked. How dare you! This tiny Yaoguai dare to cause chaos beneath the feet of the Son of Heaven! After speaking, he drew his sword and, full of killing intent, jumped down the city wall. He struck the green snake with one sword. The scales and flesh that were originally as hard as iron were unexpectedly cut open as easily as tofu. The green snake immediately let out a mournful cry. Fear flashed in its vertical pupils. As a ruler of a nation, under the blessing of fate and destiny, Emperor Wu of Qin was formidable against both powerful Yaoguai and skilled Taoist sect individuals. This was the confidence he had when facing the Jiang Jewel. There were no obstacles left in front of Emperor Wu of Qin as he advanced aggressively towards the Jiang Jewel. The red long behind Emperor Wu of Qin was as unique as the Jiang Jewel he had seen in his dreams. Facing the sword edge without dodging or avoiding, Jiang Jewel effortlessly clamped the sharp sword with 2 fingers. Emperor Wu of Qin, who witnessed this scene, had a look of horror in his eyes. He became even more puzzled about the identity of this person. At this moment, Jiang Jewel whispered, "Is this the imperial sword imbued with the true aura of the dragon?" In the next moment, the imperial sword of Emperor Wu of Qin was easily snapped in half by Jiang Jewel. Jiang Jewel looked up at Emperor Wu of Qin and continued, "Such, no match for me." The Emperor's sword itself is fused with Emperor Wu of Qin's fate and destiny. Its current fracture causes Emperor Wu of Qin to suffer a backlash, making him painfully fall backwards. No one can see the red dragon manifested from the Empire's fate has already arrived behind Jiang Jewel. Empowered by it, Jiang Jewel looks at Emperor Wu of Qin and says, "Emperor Wu of Qin, do you know your crime?" Emperor Wu of Qin angrily asks, "What crime has this monarch committed?" Jiang Jewel pinches the sword mudra. A yellow talisman stands at his fingertips, and he lightly drinks. "You don't know? Then I will let you know. I summon the generals of the Thunder Division. Divine energy sweeps across the 8 directions. Lord of Thunder, aid me." The originally clear sky suddenly became covered with dark clouds. A huge thunder pillar fell from the sky and landed squarely behind the imperial palace. Jiang Jewel said to Emperor Wu of Qin, "You should turn around and take a look at what lies beneath the garden behind the palace." Behind Emperor Wu of Qin, a rolling black smoke approached, and within the black smoke, terrifying faces appeared one by one. Emperor Wu of Qin subconsciously wanted to step back. At that moment, a hand rested on his shoulder and softly asked, "Your Majesty, do you recognize these people?" Emperor Wu of Qin was terrified and speechless. Jiang Jewel continued, "Naturally, you wouldn't recognize them. These people were all citizens of the Qin Empire. But now, their flesh and blood have turned into soul ashes, becoming the essence of the Dandrag, transforming into the Dan Primer, leaving only these remnants of souls." Jiang Jewel's voice gradually became colder, speaking solemnly. "The celestial Dan is in your belly. You have devoured thousands of your subjects, Emperor Wu of Qin. Are you at peace with yourself?" Each word was like a sharp blade, chiseling into the heart of Emperor Wu of Qin. With each word spoken, his face grew paler, sweat beading on his forehead. Yet, despite this, Emperor Wu of Qin gritted his teeth and said, "Since they are my subjects, to be used by me, what is wrong with that? What crime have I committed?" Even Jiang Jewel, known for his good temper, couldn't help but feel a bit angry upon hearing these words. He said irritably, "The Red Dragon once gave me 2 gifts in a dream. One of them is the long-tail execution guillotine, used to behead tyrannical rulers and eliminate demons and evil beings. If the king feels innocent, why not use this guillotine to sever the past?" Emperor Wu of Qin's body suddenly out of control, moving towards the long-tailed guillotine, with a look of fear in his eyes. At this moment, Yu Zhixian on the city wall couldn't help but think to himself, "This is not good." She then flew down towards the execution platform and angrily shouted, "Release him!" Her stunning beauty was now twisted into a fierce expression. The little mountain lord, who had been standing by Jiang Jewel's side. He immediately raised his head and looked coldly at Yu Zhixian with his 2 green and gold eyes, saying, "Bold enchantress, do not disturb the gentleman." After saying that, little mountain lord opened his huge mouth and spewed out a golden flame. The golden flame instantly engulfed Yu Zhixian, after being rinsed by the towering golden flame. The luxurious palace dress and long skirt on Yu Zhixian's body were burnt to ashes. The exposed body emitted a shimmering light, crystal clear, like a jade carving. Yu Zhixian, who fell on the execution ground. She was stepped on by the little mountain lord. The little mountain lord disdainfully said to Yu Zhixian, "TSK! The hearts of the people are not with you. Dare you still act unruly in front of me now?" He then said to Jiang Jewel, "Sir, please continue. This enchantress will be handed over to me." Jiang Jewel nodded at hearing this, then shouted, "Execute the decapitation! Behead the prince!" At this moment, Emperor Wu of Qin's body was like a kite with a broken string, moving uncontrollably towards the long-tailed guillotine. Yu Zhixian, who saw this scene, exclaimed in shock, "Your Majesty!" She then exerted all her strength to push away the little mountain lord. She charged straight towards Emperor Wu of Qin. At the moment when the long-tailed guillotine fell, Yu Zhixian desperately pushed Emperor Wu of Qin out of the guillotine's range, but found themselves standing under the long-tailed guillotine. Emperor Wu of Qin was stunned to see Yu Zhixian risking their life to save him, and stood frozen in place for a moment. The next moment, the sharp blade of the long-tailed guillotine fell on Yu Zhixian's body, causing their breath to weaken instantly. The originally somewhat human-like body became increasingly like jade carving. Seeing this scene, Jiang Jewel's eyes showed surprise. He murmured in his mouth. Did she actually develop true feelings? She actually intended to use Yaoguai power to fight against the razor. When the razor falls once again, Xianxia uttered an even more tragic cry, and countless Yaoguai power instantly dispersed from its body. Finally, the executioner's blade fell 3 times in a row, completely severing Xianxia's millennial cultivation in the end. Xianxia couldn't even let out a miserable cry. Her body has completely turned into jade. Emperor Wu of Qin, who witnessed this scene, immediately got up and went to Xianxia's side. He embraced her, crying bitterly as he gazed at the revealed form of Xianxia. Xianxia, with lowered eyelids, weakly said, "Your Majesty, please don't look at me. This appearance of mine must be very ugly." At this moment, Jiang Jewel said softly, "Xianxia, you attempted to seize the fate of the Qin Empire to survive the heavenly tribulation and harm the innocent people of the Qin Empire. You have committed a heinous crime. Do you have anything else to say?" Xianxia, who fell silent for a moment, said reluctantly, "If I don't seize the Empire's fate, I won't be able to resist the heavenly tribulation. Perhaps I am guilty beyond redemption. But I also want to know why I should bear such a divine destiny." Hearing this, Jiang Jewel's heart shook, murmuring, "It's divine destiny again." What exactly is divine destiny? Jiang Jewel, with a myriad of thoughts, patted little Mountain Lord's back and whispered, "Let's go, Mountain Lord. The fate of the Mountain Lord Empire and the liberation of the Red Long have come. Let the remaining matters be decided by the people of the Qin Empire themselves." Afterwards, under the gaze of the crowd in the Qin Empire, little Mountain Lord carried Jiang Jewel away from this place in a lofty manner. In a deep forest cave, Saki slowly opened his eyes in a daze from unconsciousness. Saki only realized that she was still alive when her consciousness fully returned. Saki struggled to sit up and remembered that she had just been on the execution ground, praying to her husband. Where am I now? Having no clue, Saki had just finished fixing her hair ornaments. She saw Jiang Jewel walking in from outside. Saki whispered, "Sir, it was really you who saved me. I thought you were just comforting me with that charm." The next moment, Saki actually saw Jiang Jewel kneeling in front of her with one leg. She was astonished and asked, "Sir, what are you doing?" Jiang Jewel lifted Saki's hand with his left hand. He said affectionately, "You have finally woken up, my queen." Saki, upon hearing these words, was shocked and instinctively covered her mouth. Later, with a despondent look, she said, "Sir, please don't joke. How could I possibly become a king? I am just a woman." Jiang Jewel stood up when he heard the words and helped Saki up from the stone bed, saying calmly, "But young master, is there anything to feel guilty about?" Then Jiang Jewel asked again, "The Qin Empire is nearing its end. What are young master's plans for the future?" Saki's face showed a determined expression. She said, "Then I must go back to Xianxia City to overcome difficulties together with the people of the Qin Empire." Jiang Jewel's face showed a contented smile as he said softly, "In that case, let us part ways here. It is also time for me, a wanderer, to leave the Qin Empire." Upon hearing this, Saki's lips trembled, and several times she wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. At this moment, Jiang Jewel pointed behind him at the wild boar spirit and said, "Speaking of which, this cave is the dwelling place of Mr. Wild Boar's family. We have been disturbing them for quite some time." Upon hearing this, Saki immediately felt embarrassed and waved her hand, saying, "I see. I'm sorry for the intrusion. We will leave right away." A moment later, outside the cave, Saki sat on the back of Wild Roar, and Jiang Jewel chuckled, saying, "Wow, I didn't expect Mr. Wild Boar to really agree to escort Imperial Prince and back to Xianxia City. Such hospitality." Wild Roar, upon hearing this remark, shed a tear of grievance. but forced by the prestige of Little Mountain Lord. It could only swallow the bitterness. On the eve of Qin Saki's departure, Jiang Jewel spoke again, saying, "The days of the Qin Empire are numbered. If young master wants to achieve something in the future, the country's name cannot be Qin. It should be based on the universe." Then, Jiang Jewel took out an object from his bosom and continued, "This object was entrusted to me by a friend to keep safe. Now I gift it to young master." Qin Saki took it and unwrapped the yellow package. He couldn't help but be startled. Under the wrapping was a long-head jade seal. Qin Saki was just about to ask something. Jiang Jewel then bowed his head and said to Wild Boar Spirit, "Mr. Wild Boar, I'll leave it to you next. Please take Imperial Prince into the camping site of General Chui outside Xianying City." Soon after, Wild Boar Spirit carried Qin Saki and walked towards the direction of the mountains. Qin Saki kept looking back frequently, as if there were thousands of words to say in his eyes. But in the end, those words only turned into tears of deep affection falling down. At this moment, outside Xianying City, the soldiers of the Qin Empire are waiting for the return of their queen. He watched as Qin Saki's figure walked away. Jiang Jewel quietly said in his heart, "Take care." After a moment, Jiang Jewel adjusted his mood, picked up the basket on the ground, and murmured, "Parting is indeed sad, but you won't leave me, right, Mountain Lord? So we should also hit the road." Qin Empire's affairs settled, Jiang Jewel once again embarked on a new journey. However, this time with the company of a cat. Great Qin story finished. 3 days ago, outside the execution ground. 3 days ago, outside the execution ground, a pair of monk and disciple passed by this place. The old monk whispered to the young novice, who stopped in his tracks, "Just beheading, what's there to see?" The young novice furrowed his brow and asked in puzzlement, "But master, I heard the voices of the people. They all said that the one to be beheaded is a good person." Then the young novice turned his head, looked at the old monk, and continued, "Master, good people in this world do not always meet a good end. Why do we still practice virtuous teachings?" The old monk hesitated for a moment, then said, "These matters are still too early for you to understand. The path ahead is long and arduous. Let's continue on our journey quickly." But just as they were about to leave, a sudden gust of wind rose from the ground, causing the old monk to stumble. The gourd of wine in his hand immediately tilted, and the wine spilled out, falling evenly on a woman passing by wearing a bamboo hat. The old monk put his hands together and apologized, saying, "Look at my hands. Are you okay, kind lady?" The liquid fell on the woman and sizzled like water on a hot pan, making a crackling sound. Then, a surge of demonic energy burst out from the woman. Jade Spring Essence? The woman in the straw hat slowly removed her hat and said in a deep voice, "Su-One, the living Buddha's Dharma in the temple of the sacred swan is profound. You shouldn't be shaking, right?" Then she continued in a menacing tone, "I see you are eager to die." Under the straw hat is a mysterious face. One side is a beautiful woman's face, while the other side is covered in snake-like scales. This woman is the devoted sword slave under the command of the Lord of Heavenly Demons. The old monk let out a sigh and said, "Alas, I cannot intervene in mundane matters, but when it comes to dealing with this Yaoguai demon, I must take action." Later, the old monk shook his sleeve, and a golden light flickered within it, unexpectedly trapping devoted sword slave within. A young novice on the side exclaimed with joy, "Master is truly powerful. Yaoguai's sister has been captured in the sleeve." The old monk pressed down on his trembling left hand and said in a deep voice, "No, this time we have encountered a formidable opponent. Let's leave the city quickly to avoid implicating the common people." On the other side, Little Mountain Lord rode through the mountains with Jiang Jewel. At this moment, Little Mountain Lord asked, "Sir, since you said that devoted sword slave is chasing you, why didn't she appear at the execution site?" Jiang Jewel replied, "I don't know. You'll have to ask her yourself." After a moment, Little Mountain Lord spoke again, saying, I have always wanted to ask something. How does one attract the devoted sword slave, this powerful Yaoguai? Jiang Jewel asked back. How? Is she very strong? Little Mountain Lord looked solemn. He whispered, Let me put it this way. Devoted sword slave is also known as Lord Sword Mystic. At the height of Lord Sword Mystic's fame, I am still sucking milk. This woman later became a servant of Tushanlan, the Lord of Heavenly Demons. With such a powerful master as a backup, this Lord Sword Mystic is really not easy to provoke. Upon hearing this, Jiang Jewel scratched her head awkwardly and said carefully, Actually, I have no grudges with her, but her master seems to have some issues with me. The little mountain lord's expression was beyond words when he heard this, and his fur bristled instantly. He was so scared that he turned back into a little cat, sitting on the ground. Jiang Jewel, looking angry, said to the little mountain lord, Speeding along. Why did you suddenly shrink? It's very dangerous, you know. Little Mountain Lord is looking at Jiang Jewel. He said coldly, I think we should just destroy it directly. You shouldn't offend anyone. You offended such an extraordinary figure. Just as Jiang Jewel and Little Mountain Lord were arguing, a voice sounded in their ears. Jiang Jewel. You really make it hard for me to find you. Upon hearing this, Jiang Jewel and Little Mountain Lord immediately froze in place, thinking to themselves, What's going on? Speak of the devil, and devil appears. The next second, Little Mountain Lord jumped down from Jiang Jewel's arms. He walked straight towards Devoted Sword Slave. Seeing this scene, Jiang Jewel felt relieved and said in her heart, Mountain Lord usually loves to brag and pose like Cat Overlord. I didn't expect that at a critical moment, he could actually stand in front of me. I'm sorry, Mountain Lord, I misunderstood you. While Jiang Jewel was still blaming herself, she heard the faint voice of Little Mountain Lord saying, Lord Sword Mystic, in fact, this Sir Jiang behind me is just a chance encounter. There are reasons for everything. Sword Lord, don't harm the innocent. Upon hearing this, Lord Sword Mystic whispered as he passed by Little Mountain Lord, Since there is no connection, there is no need to spare your life. Little Mountain Lord thought this would help him escape a disaster, but the words of Devoted Sword Slave immediately made him feel uneasy. The next moment, Little Mountain Lord reverted to his original appearance and slapped Devoted Sword Slave fiercely. Facing Little Mountain Lord's sudden attack, Devoted Sword Slave skillfully dodged to the side, easily avoiding it. She then teased, Are we being too naive? The little kitty from the southern heavenly mountain. Seeing that his attack missed, Little Mountain Lord shouted to Jiang Jewel, Mr. Run! After that, Little Mountain Lord carried Jiang Jewel and fled deep into the mountains. After a moment, Little Mountain Lord said to Jiang Jewel, Sir, take a quick look. Has the woman followed us? Jiang Jewel looked back and replied, No one. Perhaps we have lost her. Suddenly, Little Mountain Lord's steps halted abruptly. He made an emergency stop, catching Jiang Jewel off guard and almost throwing her off. After Jiang Jewel steadied herself, she asked in uncertainty, Why did you suddenly stop? Little Mountain Lord replied bitterly, Madam, please look ahead. Jiang Jewel then looked up to the front, only to see that the Devoted Sword Slave had already appeared ahead and blocked the way. Little Mountain Lord whispered, Sir, if I surrender now, will she treat the prisoners well? Jiang Jewel replied indifferently, I do not know about the treatment, but with her temperament, I am still useful. At least my life is temporarily safe. Little Mountain Lord lamented, Then am I useless and will be killed by a single sword? Jiang Jewel comforted, How can you say you are useless? Mountain Lord comes from a noble background, and with your appearance and bones, you are a priceless treasure. Removing the skin and turning the bones into leather, who wouldn't like that? Little Mountain Lord almost felt like retreating into himself upon hearing this. Devoted Sword Slave saw the two of them whispering to each other. He waited until they finished chatting before speaking up. Are you done talking? If you're tired of running, surrender. If you still want to struggle, I'm also ready to accompany you. Jiang Jewel chuckled and said, "Back then, I could escape in front of the Lord of Heavenly Demons. Do you think you have the full confidence to keep me here?" Devoted Sword Slave replied lightly, "You can give it a try." Jiang Jewel took out a yellow talisman from his pocket, held it with 2 fingers in a sword gesture, and placed the yellow talisman between his chest. He shouted loudly, "1,000-mile swift travel." Jiang Jewel waited calmly for a long time with an indifferent expression, but there was no movement. His expression gradually became tense. This god talisman was also obtained from Old Long at Sun Moon Lake. Why is it not working now? Could it be that little mountain lord is too fat to move it? Devoted Sword Slave coldly looked at Jiang Jewel's movements. Seeing him frozen in place, Devoted Sword Slave took out a golden order from his arms and said softly, "My master knows that you have the talisman of the Sun Moon Lake Long God in your hand. How could you be unprepared? This is the talisman order obtained from the Long God. With this order, the talismans in your hand are all ineffective. What do you still rely on?" Jiang Jewel's heart skipped a beat, not expecting that the Old Long had left a contingency plan. However, he did not blame his old friend. No matter how powerful the Sun Moon Lake Long God was, he was still a subject of the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom. How could he afford to offend the Lord of Heavenly Demons? At this point, Jiang Jewel sneered and said, "As a wanderer in the Jianghu, naturally, I still have some tricks up my sleeve." Jiang Jewel then formed hand seals and shouted lightly, "I respectfully summon the true sovereign of the profound heaven, Demon Purger." After a shout, the weather changed dramatically in the sky. Devoted Sword Slave looked up at the sky with a solemn expression and asked, "The art of summoning gods? Are you a disciple of the Palace of Divine Heights?" Jiang Jewel smiled slightly and said, "I stayed for several months but was chased off the mountain, so I can't be considered a disciple." Devoted Sword Slave looked at the giant hand reaching down from the sky and continued, "Palace of Divine Heights disciple excels in the art of summoning gods, but mostly summons the minor deities from the 36 celestial realms. I have never heard of anyone who can summon the deities from the supreme realm of the 9 skies." "What exactly are you?" Jiang Jewel looked solemn and said, "Just a wandering fortune teller." Devoted Sword Slave took off the sword scabbard and said coldly, "Jiang Jewel, you are indeed very capable. Sun Moon Lake regards you as a confidant, Qin Empire's Fate Red Long worships you as the savior, and the Mountain Lord of Southern Heavenly Mountain Range is willing to be your mount. Even the old living Buddha from the Temple of the Sacred Swan has stopped me for you. Now you can even invite the gods from the supreme realm of the 9 skies, but unfortunately, your opponent is me." After Devoted Sword Slave finished speaking, he took out an ancient and simple bronze sword from the scabbard. Jiang Jewel, who saw the scene, he shouted again, "True sovereign of the Demon Purger, help me defeat the demon." Devoted Sword Slave looked at the giant hand in front of him and sneered, "Are you from the Orthodox gods? Jiang Jewel, do you know which sword I wield in dedication to my master?" "The sword is called Karma Cutting." As the words fell, Devoted Sword Slave fiercely swung the ancient sword in his hand to strike at the giant hand. The giant hand also acted amidst the sounds of the sword. Easily split in half, Devoted Sword Slave flicked his wrist. The bronze ancient sword emitted a crisp sword cry. She coldly stated, "This sword kills without accumulating sins, slays enemies without taking on karma. Even if my hands are stained with blood, it is still clear and blameless. What can the Orthodox gods do to me? Now, none of your tactics can get rid of me. What other tricks do you have?" Jiang Jewel's expression suddenly became dull. He doesn't understand that Devoted Sword Slave is just a servant girl. Why does she have to be so strong? Jiang Jewel chuckled and said, "Of course there is a trump card. That is..." Little Mountain Lord ran. Little Mountain Lord had been waiting for this sentence. With a swoosh, he turned around and charged backward. Devoted Sword Slave sneered disdainfully, then chased forward with his sword poised. Just then, Jiang Jewel clasped his hands together and yelled loudly, respectfully invite the Supreme Wind Heaven's wind-riding True Lord, and the True Lord of Divine Movement. At the next moment, the little mountain lord's speed suddenly increased dramatically as the two silver talismans in his palm fused into his body. One person and one cat disappeared instantly in front of the devoted sword slave. The devoted sword slave tightly gripped the bronze sword and exclaimed angrily, "What? That damn Jiang Jewel can really run!" As they escaped for their lives, the little mountain lord anxiously asked, "Sir, asking for heaven's sake, what are we going to do?" But where is the way out? Thinking back to the injuries on devoted sword slave from before, it seemed to be a gift from that living Buddha. After all, this is not the territory of the 10,000 Yaoguai's kingdom, but the human race. Devoted sword slave would certainly not dare to be too aggressive, otherwise, there would be powerful beings from the human race coming to the rescue. So, as long as he could hold on, there might still be hope for himself. Thinking of this, Jiang Jewel gritted his teeth and said, "Go to the temple of the sacred swan." Inside the Buddha hall on the back mountain of the temple of the sacred swan, the young novice was lying on the old monk's legs. He cried heartbreakingly. The pale-faced old monk looked at the young novice with a helpless expression and said, "I was only meditating to heal. I didn't die." The young novice still sorrowfully said, "But master, you have shed so much blood." The old monk smiled lightly and said, "It's fine. Just kill an old hen to replenish the blood." The young novice murmured softly, "Master, eating meat is breaking the precepts. Last time, sect leader and master nephew were already very angry." At this moment, the old monk suddenly coughed violently, covered his mouth with his hand, which was full of bloodstains. He sighed. On that day, devoted sword slave appeared in Xianxia city to look for someone, and I coincidentally blocked devoted sword slave, allowing the person to escape. Whether it was intentional by someone or a twist of fate, my karmic entanglement with this person is already set. Let me see who this person is tangled with my karmic thread in the end. The old monk raised his hand, and a golden thread extended from his index finger. The young novice stared with big round eyes. He suddenly ran outside, with a childish voice shouting, "Master, master, this golden thread is connected to the sky." Upon hearing this, the old monk was extremely shocked and muttered in a daze, "Sky? Why are sentient beings in this world entangled with him? Could it be that this person is an immortal from the heavens?" Suddenly, the young novice beside him exclaimed, "Master, your eyes!" The old monk turned around in shock, only to find blood overflowing from his eye sockets. The next moment, he suddenly lowered his head and spat out a mouthful of blood, smiling miserably. "Why didn't you come 1,000 years earlier?" Great opportunity from the heavens. It is also a huge trouble. If it had come 1,000 years earlier, he would have met this person. But now, it's all too late. He dares not see. He also dares not respond. The old monk's eyes are full of kindness. He gently patted the young novice's bald head and said with some reluctance, "Disciple, our master-disciple relationship ends today." Upon hearing these words, the young novice burst into tears and asked, "Master, are you abandoning me?" The old monk gently said, "Don't cry, don't cry. You are destined to become a Buddha and attain enlightenment. I am old and unable to protect you. Your true teacher is waiting outside. The opportunity has come, and our master-disciple relationship has come to an end." The old monk then solemnly whispered a few words to the young monk and gently patted his hand, saying, "Go now." The young monk cried sorrowfully while holding his hands together in prayer, chanting, "Amitabha Buddha," with a tearful voice. The old monk returned the greeting with a respectful gesture, saying, "Amitabha Buddha." After a moment, the young monk walked out from the temple gate. Immediately, an anxious voice from Jiang Jewel came into his ears. "Hello, little master. I, Jiang Jewel, respectfully request an audience with the living Buddha of the temple of the sacred swan." As soon as Jiang Jewel finished speaking, he saw the little novice kneeling obediently in front of him, with his bald head touching the ground. He softly said, Disciple Kola pays respect to master. This sentence made Jiang Jewel's expression change from blank to shocked, his mouth slightly open, and he asked in confusion, "What's going on? Young disciple, what did you say your name was?" The little novice raised his head and earnestly said, "Kola, I am a disciple of the co-generation. Master hopes I can sing happy songs every day, so he gave me this Dharma name. I really like it." Jiang Jewel muttered softly, "Kola, I used to like it too." Then he shook his head abruptly and asked, "No, why do you call me master?" The young novice's eyes turned sad. He said with a grievance, "Master said, master is hurt. He said my real master has come. His mission is complete." Jiang Jewel's expression stiffened slightly, and he helplessly said, "Actually, I came here seeking refuge. I suggest we still enter the temple." Just then, the temple's gate immediately banged shut. Seeing this scene, Jiang Jewel's eyes were full of helplessness. What does this old monk mean? His own troubles haven't been resolved yet.